before we actually start. Hello, we're live. Chat room, YouTube watchers, welcome. It's me, Elon. This is not Brian, though. It's special guest, Cam Robinson. Brian is, I'll say it on the show. We'll save it for the show. Very exciting. Thank you for joining us. Okay, now we'll start. Yes! Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the best fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who own Erik Karlsson in their keeper pools. I'm your host, Elon Dubrowski, and with me this week is not Brian Comm. He is on paternity leave, but instead, we've brought in a ringer. We've got a super special guest. He's the managing editor at Dobber Prospects, associate editor at Dobber Hockey, Canucks, and Elias Pettersson super fan. You guys all know who I'm talking about. It's Cam Robinson. Hey, Cam.
Hey, how's it going, Elon?
Thanks so much for coming back on the show, filling in. You're going to be here this week and next week. So people are going to be in line for a lot of prospect advice. But you know the whole NHL, right? You don't forget about these players once they've played a few games, right?
No, that's right. The fun thing about the draft eligible guys is that everybody's interested in them. As soon as they get drafted, usually it just goes to one team. But in the fantasy world, we're all interested in everybody. So it's perfect.
Yeah, and I've got so many players I'm going to ask you about. I'm going to try to cram in as many players as I can before you tell me you have to go and take care of your kids. I'm like the only one apparently now in fantasy hockey that doesn't have kids. That's cool. All my listeners are my kids. Okay, before we get started, of course, let us mention that we are presented by DobberHockey.com, proudly presented. And normally I would do a whole spiel here about why DobberHockey.com is great, but I've got the associate editor right here. So Cam, why don't you tell the listeners about DobberHockey.com?
Well, it's got everything you need. So the report generator just keeps getting better. Eric Doust, he just improves it basically on a daily basis. So all your advanced stats, all your line combinations, it's where I do literally all the research for all my articles and podcasts. And even if I didn't work for them, that's where I'd be going still. So it's great. It's got a decent little podcast that gets pumped on it too every now and again. Yeah, it's a great site.
Yeah, check it out, dobberhockey.com. Cam, right off the bat, Ryan here in the chat room is dropping a supernova hot take. Pettersson greater than McDavid. We'll talk about, I saved, by the way, Elias Pettersson talk to the end of the podcast, just so that you don't go on for like 30 minutes about him, and then we can't talk about the rest of the players. But do you want to give us our quick score out of 1 out of 10? How hot is that take, that Pettersson's greater than McDavid?
Oh, man, that's a 12 probably right there.
Oh, too hot, Ryan, but it's close. I mean, I'm curious to get actually well, okay, let's talk about someone else who's super hot right now. Elias Pettersson actually hasn't been so hot, but one guy who is on fire, and how could I not start the show without talking about Patrik Laine? Oh my God, he had this stupid 5-goal game yesterday in an 8-4 win over St. Louis. I was going to win my cupful matchup against Dave, but this 5-goal game ruined me. I hated it. Every single goal that I saw him score was like a dagger into my heart. 1, 2, terrible. So I'm going to lose, but Patrik Laine owners are very happy. And Patrik Laine, what a superstar. And this is a guy who, just a few weeks ago, maybe we were talking about, what's wrong with him? Why isn't he scoring? Since then, he's taken off. I've got actually some fun facts I found on Reddit /r/hockey that I thought I would share about this 5-goal game. He is apparently the first 20-year-old to score 5 goals in a game since Wayne Gretzky. He's got actually the second most hat tricks in history of any player ever before the age of 21. 7 hat tricks. Only Wayne Gretzky has more with 12. It's a really fun link here. But man, Cam, I just want to get your take on Laine here, because he's still really young, and I just want to know what do you think his upside is, or maybe that's even a stupid question at this point. But just to remind everyone, he finished October with 3 goals and 2 assists in 12 games. He was playing on the third line. Things were not looking good at all. Now, as we approach the end of November, he's up to 19 goals and 3 assists for 22 points in 22 games. Just like that, back up to point per game, almost a goal per game. It's been a bumpy ride, but at the start of the year, Brian and I predicted that he would win the Rocket Richard Trophy, and now he's definitely right on track for that. He's also at 90 shots, so over 4 shots a game. You're a big Dynasty League guy. Everyone knows this. You play in these leagues where you're drafting people and holding them for their whole entirety of their career. If you were in a league drafting tomorrow, starting from scratch, how high do you think Laine would go?
Well, you got to think that McDavid and McKinnon are going 1-2 if you're starting a dynasty today. I think Austin Matthews might get that 3-hole. But the shoulder injuries are starting to concern a couple people, myself included. But just as the center ice, that he gets kind of involved in more plays, like you see Laine's going for the Cy Young. He's got 19 goals and what did you say, 3 or 4 assists. So he's not going to chip in on a ton of those. But I'd have him right in that 3 to 5 range. You've got Rantanen and Pettersson and Pasternak and guys like that kind of hanging around that top 5, top 7. I wouldn't be surprised if he went 2 in some leagues. But what he's doing right now, it's just crazy. And I was pretty choked about his 5-goal game last night too, because I was getting very close to acquiring him in my keeper league. I had a tentative deal in place, sort of thing. And the guy goes off and pops 5 last night. Deal's off the table, obviously now.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's just brutal. But his metrics aren't even all that crazy. So he's clicking at 21%, which historically is very, very high. Like we haven't seen someone shoot over 20% since the 90s for a career sort of thing. Stamkos leads all active players, 16 and a half sort of thing. But I see Patrik Laine as the most devastating one-shot finisher that we've seen in a long, long time. So Alex Ovechkin is that volume shooting guy that just pumps a ton of shots. Laine is putting up a ton of shots this year, but his release is just insane. So he's a guy that I think could live in the high teens, low 20s for a full season, maybe even for like the peak of his career the next 4, 5, 6 years. He's one of these guys that, he's on pace for 60 this year. Wouldn't surprise me if he put up 60 goals. So he's very, very dominant. I tweeted out there, the buy low window is over. If you want to get him now, you're paying full pony.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like it slammed right in your face, that buy low period after that 5-goal game. By the way, you're talking about that shooting percentage. He definitely upped it last night. That was 5 goals on 5 shots, I believe. Insane.
No, that's nuts. You just don't see that kind of stuff. But he's one of these guys, and really, really elite goal scorers. They're kind of up and down a little bit, but they go through stretches where they're going to score a goal a game for, 3 weeks, and then they might go cold for 4 or 5 games. And that's just, you kind of have to live and die with that. But you just leave this guy in your lineup, especially now that he's kind of found himself a home on line 2 there with Little and with Connor now on the left side. I think that's a safe spot for him to play his 5-on-5 minutes, and then obviously on that vaunted top power play.
Yeah, so, okay, obviously we can't really advise people to do too much with Patrik Laine. Either you have him and you love it, or you don't have him and you hate yourself. But at the same time, like you said, there are a couple other players that are really benefiting from playing with this guy who's on so much fire. Like Kyle Connor, he had 4 assists yesterday, bringing him to 24 points in 22 games. A very low key, like all of a sudden this guy's over a point per game. Kyle Connor, he was bumped from that top line with Scheifele and Wheeler where he started the year, but it doesn't seem to be bothering him at all. Like, do you think that Connor can keep this up and cruise into the 70-point club, join a bunch of players that might also join this year?
Yeah, I do, for sure. I don't think he was bumped off that top line. I think he was moved down to help ignite the second line and to help Nikolai Ehlers get a chance to get rolling up on the top line. So he's kind of one of these players that, obviously love him when he's playing on the top line. But he kind of makes other players better. He's a nice complementary piece. He doesn't drive the line really in either situation on 1 or 2, but he's still on the top power play unit. Had a great rookie season, kind of under the radar a little bit. But I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that this is a player that if he's healthy, he can be playing at a 70-point pace. Especially, you definitely want him while Patrik Laine is rolling hot, because he's going to get a ton of apples. Yeah,
and again, Connor's also someone that's probably owned in all leagues. But okay, now here's some actually actionable advice, potentially, because Brian Little, the centerman of this great second line, he's only owned in 10% of Yahoo leagues as of yesterday. Maybe it's gone up since I started prepping for this podcast after that 5-goal game. But he had 4 assists yesterday himself, 1 goal and 3 assists in his previous 4 games. He's not on the top power play, but still, got to be worth adding while Laine is so red hot, right?
Yeah, so, Little has long been one of these guys that I've streamed in different leagues. You grab him when he's playing with Laine and when he's rolling hot, sort of thing. And he's kind of a nice filler that can play at a 65-point pace for stretches, and then he'll kind of go dormant for a little bit too, and then you can cut him loose. So now would be a great time to have him. It would have been even better if you picked him up 3 days ago. We'll see if Laine can keep it going here. But the Jets had a really poor schedule because they had to go over to Finland there, so they haven't played a ton of games, so they've got a lot coming up here too. So if they're all moving and shaking on in that top 6, and yeah, I don't mind grabbing Little off the wire.
Yeah, and keep in mind, next week, 4 games for Winnipeg, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. So if you could fit him in your lineup for 4 games, that could be a really good stream. And by the way, he's only a center, so that might be a reason to not add him. And that actually makes me wonder, back when you were saying like who are your top guys to own in a dynasty league, of all the guys you mentioned, McKinnon and McDavid and Austin Matthews, they're all centers. I feel like you got to get, even if you think that Patrik Laine is like 10 points worse than these other guys, you might still want to draft him higher just because he has that wing eligibility. I know in your like big league that you are dominating every year, or at least your roster looks like you should be. It's only like, it's just forwards are all the same, right? You don't differentiate between centers and wingers.
Yeah, that's right. So if you're looking at positional requirements up front, then absolutely, that probably bumps Laine to 2 in a league like that. I don't want to hear anyone not taking McDavid first overall in the dynasty, but to have that winger eligibility, you're absolutely right. It's huge, especially if you're counting shots and stuff too. Like, this is a guy who just pumps shots on net. So yeah, he's right up there.
Yeah, and hey, he's even, I think, hitting at least 1 hit a game, which isn't like insane, but it's not nothing. So everything. He helps you everywhere. Okay, let's too much love on this. Let's bring the mood down here because one guy who you mentioned a little bit earlier that's having a lot of trouble. Like Winnipeg is scoring all of these goals, but Nikolai Ehlers doing absolutely nothing. No points yesterday in this like 8-goal game, which is always the most frustrating thing in fantasy, right? When you have a player on a team, you see they scored 8 goals and then you go in, nothing for your guy. Brutal, especially for someone playing on the top line with Scheifele and Wheeler. Like, what can be a better spot? But yet he only has 2 points in his last 6 games, 10 points in 22 games overall, so less than a half point per game. This guy, Nikolai Ehlers, he had 60 and 64 points in his last 2 seasons, and now he's 22 years old, and like we assumed he'd have room to grow going into this year because he's still aging, and this is a guy with a high pedigree, and instead of growing, he's taken a huge step back so far. Do you have any idea what's going on with him? Should we start giving people permission to drop him in one-year leagues? Like, we get, I think, questions on Twitter. He might be the player we get asked about the most. Like, can I drop Nikolai Ehlers? Please, I want to drop him. He's doing nothing for me. And I feel like for the most part, I'm always saying, unless they have amazing options available free agency, I'm like, no, you got to hold on. He's on the top line of Winnipeg. He's a high pedigree guy. He's going to do well. But at this point, like, I'm really curious to get your thoughts on him. I guess both for one-year leagues and through like a dynasty lens.
Yeah, for sure. So what's going on right now is, he's in a bit of a slump. So his personal conversion rate's down, 3%. His 5-on-5 shooting percentage is down as well, 2.5%, something like that, or even more from a couple of years ago. He's seeing 40 seconds less of power play time, so that top unit's getting a lot more time, and that's always been the big thing with Ehlers is that he's a strong 5-on-5 player. He's creative. He's fast. He's the king of zone entries. Like, this guy just wheels through the neutral zone and sets up shop. He's so these microstats guys, they love him. I love him too. I was a big fan of him. I had him in my keeper for several years. I just dealt him for Wheeler in the offseason. And it was a win now kind of thing where I was like, well, Ehlers is great. He doesn't get that top power play unit time, so he's probably never going to be an 85-point guy. I'll take the swing and grab Wheeler for a couple of years here in the end of his prime. But yeah, I didn't expect him to slide back down. I thought he'd be a 60, 65-point guy. He has a 976 PDO right now, so he's getting some bad luck, due for a market correction. His zone starts, his IPP remain pretty consistent, even a little bit higher than his kind of averages. So I think the puck will start going in for him, especially if he's playing on that top line. But as long as he's on the second power play unit, he's never really going to hit that elite status. You just don't see guys doing it. They can't generate that much offense at 5-on-5 or in the 30 seconds of power play time they get at the end of the penalty. So really like him. Think he's a dynamic player. If he was on a different team or in a different situation, I think he could be a point a game guy. But right now he's kind of fighting it, and so this could be a nice buy low opportunity for people if you have the space to bring him onto your team and put him on your bench while he's ice cold and just kind of wait for him to wake up a little bit and play at that 60, 65-point pace. But again, you can't be buying him thinking he's going to get 75 or 80 next year, because I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's super rare, right? For someone to not be on the top power play and get like close to a point per game, but even like 60, 65 would be like a tremendous improvement compared to what he's been doing so far. Man, you killed that Cam. You like whatever you're doing, like everyone wants to be in this league, but not with you in it. They want to like take over your team. Blake Wheeler has 4 goals and 23 assists in 22 games. So he's destroying. It makes it even more crazy how Ehlers is not getting any points while Wheeler's going nuts. But okay, I guess that's enough Jets talk. We got a lot of other players to talk about here. How about like we go to the other side of that massacre yesterday, where the St. Louis Blues, who have like been massively underperforming this season, they recently fired their coach Mike Yeo. Craig Berube has taken over as the interim replacement. It's been 3 games now since they made that coaching change. They split decisions with Nashville, which is I guess pretty good, but then they had that terrible loss to Winnipeg yesterday. One big question that everyone that I saw was asking with the coaching changes, what was going to happen for the D-men on St. Louis? Because we've all been wondering, like, why is Vince Dunn on the top power play? Like, Pietrangelo has been on the second power play. He's had a really slow start to the year. Could this be the thing that will trigger Pietrangelo to get back on PP1, get rolling again? And then, of course, there's Colton Parayko, who's been doing nothing, and I don't see that change. I'm going to be curious to see what you think about him. But like looking at Pietrangelo, okay, so Vince Dunn, first of all, he's been doing nothing for a while. I feel like, I don't know, like before we were recommending for people to grab him because he was getting some points. At this point, even on the top power play, it's hard to recommend holding someone who's only got 1 assist in his last 10 games. Then you have Pietrangelo. He had 3 points in his last 2 games going into yesterday, and like a decent number of over 50% power play games, though he hasn't, like as of that last game, he wasn't on the top power play. Do you think it's time for Vince Dunn owners to give up on him and for people to start buying back in on Alex Pietrangelo, or do you think it's just going to be kind of like a bad season for all these people?
Well, St. Louis is in a bit of a downward spiral here, obviously. But no, I do think Pietrangelo will get his chance. He's playing on a pretty decent second power play unit right now anyways, and that's kind of helping him a bit too. But Vince Dunn is an offensive player, so that's what he does. He's one of these guys you put on your team and you shelter him on the third pair, but then you load him up on PP1. They're trying to basically make him Shattenkirk 2.0 sort of thing, and he's just not that. Not at this point, anyways. So I do think Pietrangelo, especially with the new coach, that he's the captain. He's a leader on this team. He eats up a ton of minutes that eventually they're going to slide him back onto that unit as long as Dunn's not doing too much. St. Louis power play is not even all that bad this year, despite Dunn not doing anything. So, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they're top half of the league anyways. So I think with Pietro, he was a clear sleeper coming into this season that he was going to drop his point totals after that big year last year, and he had triplets in the offseason. And so you don't have any kids, Elon. Brian's figuring it out right now that you got one kid, it's hard enough. You got three, I don't care if you have a nanny, you're not sleeping too much. It's an adjustment period. It's a game changer. So I think he's probably coming out of it maybe a little bit now. I'm just obviously speculating here, but I'd be sniffing around him and to see if you can get him on the cheap right now before he kind of wakes up for real and gets on that top unit. And anyone who's playing with Ryan O'Reilly and Tarasenko and those guys, it should generate offense. So the fact that Dunn isn't getting that offense, and that's concerning for sure for his owners.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think now's a great time to go and get Pietrangelo. Like I said, he had a 1 assist game and he had a 1 goal, 1 assist game. So he's been getting some points. Now he had that no point game, that terrible game against Winnipeg. So I feel like now might be your last chance maybe to go and get him for super cheap from his owner. Like, I guess he was starting to heat up, but I guess it was just a false start. Now I'm just as low on him as ever. And maybe now you could get him. Yeah, I feel like it might be just a matter of time. You got a new coach. You got to try something. St. Louis right now, they're second last in the league. I'm looking at the overall league standings. That's terrible. Do you want to guess who's last, by the way?
It's the LA Kings.
Yeah, brutal. Like, who would have guessed? These are two teams that we thought were going to be playoff contenders, and they've both been terrible. Meanwhile, who's first in the league?
Toronto?
Well, yeah, that wouldn't be as surprising. They're close. They were there a couple days ago, but it's the Buffalo Sabres right now.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, they've got 34 points. Nashville's got 33. They're wild. I guess we could talk about them. So yeah, so far this season's been pretty topsy-turvy with goalies and even just teams in general, the good ones not doing well. It's crazy. But okay, what about Colton Parayko, by the way, over on St. Louis? He's been playing big minutes at even strength. He plays shorthanded, but barely gets power play time. Only has 6 points in 22 games on the season at this point. He had huge hype when he broke onto the scene. I remember everyone was talking about Colton Parayko and wanting to grab him when he first joined the league, but he's like 25 now. His career high is 35 points, which he hit last year. Is this now his ceiling in your opinion? Or do you see any path to Parayko getting to becoming at least a half point per game guy? And either way, if people are still holding him at this point in the season, are they snoozing big time? Do they need to let go?
Yeah, they do. I never really bought into the hype for Parayko, to be honest with you. He's a big guy. He's got a big shot. He's not overly creative. He's a good two-way guy who can chip in with some points, and he can hammer the shot on net, and he can take the body. He's a good player, one that you want on your team in real life, but a guy that I've never been overly interested in fantasy. I think if he got dumped on a top power play and they wheeled him out there for 3 minutes on that unit every night, that he could be a guy who could put up 40, 42 points, but I don't see him getting that deployment. They don't like him in that situation. He's not that creative player, so you're just hoping to queue him up for one-timers. So no, I think people are snoozing on him if they still got him, and he's one of these guys that, if anyone's interested in still buying that hype that was around 2 or 3 years ago, go ahead and sell him for anything you can. But right now, I think he's more of a 30-point guy than a 40-point guy.
Yeah, he's still owned in my Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patriot Fantasy League Tier 2 division, which by the way, Ken, we've been trying to get you into the cupful forever. I guess maybe with your kids, you don't want to join extra leagues. We got to get you in there. We got to raise the spotlight of this league.
Oh man, yeah, I got a lot of balls in the air. It's tough to add any more.
Yeah, but this is the most elite league. But anyways, that's okay. I'm sure your league sounds fun too. I guess you have a stranglehold on that one. Doesn't even seem like you need to make any decisions in order to win this league for the next 10 years. But looking at the or at least get into the playoffs. I guess in these 1 week playoff matchups, anything could happen. Okay, we're on the Blues. Let's take a quick look at the forwards. Some injury trouble there. Jaden Schwartz is out. Alex Steen is out. Poor Jaden Schwartz, by the way. This guy can't put together a healthy season. Can't imagine he has a lot of value in dynasty leagues. Lots of upside, but he gets injured all the time. Yeah, so I didn't even plan. There's nothing really to talk to you about. He was on the top line with Tarasenko while he was healthy. Maybe once he gets back, if you could grab him, stash him in IR, then why not? He's good when he plays. But yeah, nothing great. In the meantime, though, Zach Sanford was playing on the top line with Tarasenko and Ryan O'Reilly recently. He had a goal versus Nashville on Friday, an assist yesterday. Is there anything here? Is he worth a stream while on the top line? Who's this Zach Sanford guy?
Yeah, I like Sanford. He's a kid who's got some good hands. He's got offensive instincts. I've always got a time for a young kid who's stepping in and getting good deployment. So obviously, if he's playing on that top line, he's going to get some opportunities here. He's passing the puck to Tarasenko and O'Reilly. But he's getting no power play time. He's not on either units. So that's gonna kind of kill his real fantasy value there. So deployment is king. Top line is great, but most of the action happens on the power play anyway. So for the 5-on-5 goal scoring gets spread out a little bit. It's a little more random. So until he sees some power play action, I'm not going to be racing to grab him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, this is the type of guy that you grab as a stream if you want to get a few games played, and it's a deep-ish league. Next week, St. Louis plays on Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. So you could maybe wait till Wednesday morning, grab him for like 3 games in 4 days, and then drop him. There's some strategy you could do there. Good spot to be in for sure, but though no guarantee that he stays there for all 3 of those games. On the other end, you have Robbie Fabry, who was on that top line for a little bit, but he's been bumped to, I guess, the second line with Schenn and Robert Thomas. He only has 3 points in 12 games. Kind of a bummer to say, because this guy's had a tough ride, and maybe he's still working out the kinks after not having played for so long. But it feels like no one should be owning Robbie Fabry at this point, right? Until he gets going. If when.
Yeah, so another guy who just can't stay healthy, really unfortunate. So he had that high ankle sprain at the World Juniors, 4 years ago. I remember he was looking so strong early on in that tournament. Got knocked out for the tournament, missed months of time in the OHL too, and that was kind of the beginning of the string of injuries that he suffered through. Really skilled guy though, so like you said, it's going to take a few beats for him to get back up to speed after missing so much time. He's a player that I like. I like his skill set. I like the way he plays the game when he's healthy. And I like that second line. So Schenn, and I'm a big Robert Thomas fan. A rookie, though, who's still finding his way in the league. So he's going to be a dominant force. You're going to kind of get some hot streaks and some cold streaks with that one. He's on that second power play unit, like I was saying, that I like. That's the one Pietrangelo's playing on right now. So he's one of these guys that, yeah, I wouldn't have him on my team at this moment, but he's a watch lister. So, all of a sudden you're going to see that if he's healthy, I think his feet are going to catch up and his hands are going to catch up. And he's always had that great mind for offense. He's going to start putting some points on the board, and maybe you catch him a little bit early before he really gets rolling. And you can grab him for a stream. St. Louis really needs him to be a player for them in the top 6 if they want to contend. Maybe not this year, but in future years as they keep moving forward there. So, yeah, he's one of these guys that I'd throw him on the watch list, and I'd be checking his deployment, checking to see his power play time, seeing if he's getting shots on goal, looking for signs of life sort of thing. And then if he puts a couple points on the board, maybe grab him as a speculative ad if you got space.
Okay, that makes sense. So sort of like maybe we even have to give Fabry some time. Don't write him off completely yet. He needs to maybe get 20, 25, 30 games in before we know that he's playing at his peak level. Maybe even if that, maybe he needs more. One piece of good news on St. Louis. I know we have a lot more to talk about, but I got to mention Jake Allen, who's actually been good lately, which is very surprising. Before coming in late and getting destroyed by Laine yesterday, so let's not count that, Allen had put together 4 amazing starts in his previous 5 games. So I feel like he might be a good guy to grab out of free agency if he was dropped during that super cold stretch to start the season. Like, in general, Cam, like, goalies are so unpredictable this season. We've ranted about it every episode. I almost don't want to talk too much about goalies, but yet still I'm going to have a bunch of goalies I'm going to run by you hopefully quickly. Do you have any words of wisdom about what to expect from Jake Allen for the rest of the season, or are you just in the dark as the rest of us?
Yeah, who knows really? But I trust Allen about as far as I can throw him. He had that nice hype coming up where, he's the goalie of the future in St. Louis and he was going to be a player, and he came in and he looked good. But he's not so young anymore, and he's had multiple seasons of, subpar results, long stretches of, putrid results. And this season he had that to start the year too. So, it's nice that he's playing well now, especially he's rewarding some of these teams that held on to him. It's just such a crapshoot with goaltenders. So, this is a team that should be playing around 500, a little bit better hockey. So if he's the starter, which he is, there's Chad Johnson's not going to steal that many starts, and Ville Husso's not playing that great in the AHL. So, as long as Allen's healthy and he doesn't drop 850 save percentages for weeks at a time, he's going to get the starts, and there should be some value there in a middling team starter. But yeah, you're gonna eat up some losses there too when he lets in 5 goals on 15 shots a couple times in a 2-week span. So I don't love him, but you could do worse. How about that?
Right. If you need a goalie, like a lot of times we get people asking us like on the Facebook group or something, you know, like, oh, I need a goalie. Like, who should I go after? Like the obvious answer, like, sure, go after Bobrovsky or whoever, you know, but like buy low on like a Jake Allen, though maybe now you can't because he's been doing kind of well lately. But I'd rather just like pay nothing, get a goalie who could potentially be good and might be bad just because you never know with these guys. Okay, so how about we do a quick goalie roundup? I'll try to run through them as fast as we can, but obviously there's been a lot of goalie news last week. We got to start in Pittsburgh. Matt Murray is out long term with a lower body injury. And I got to tell you, Cam, like I feel kind of bad about it, but I own Matt Murray in the couple, and I was not too disappointed to see this news. I was pretty close to dropping him with DeSmith getting the majority of starts and Murray doing terribly when he did play. So like at least now I get to stash him in IR. Maybe he takes like a long vacation, as we sometimes call it on the show. You know, obviously heal, maybe get his head right. Maybe he'll come back and be awesome for me in time for my fantasy hockey playoffs or like whatever in a couple of months. I don't care. Take your time, Matt Murray. You weren't helping me anyways. But in the meantime, we've got Casey DeSmith, who's continued his impressive season yesterday. He stopped 37 of 39 in a 4-2 win over Columbus. DeSmith is up to a .927 save percentage on the season overall in 14 games, so he's doing really well. And then Tristan Jarry was called up after the Murray injury announcement, and he was great in his first game as well in a 2-1 overtime loss to Boston on Friday. He stopped 35 of 37. Do we have a situation here where it's like DeSmith the for sure starter since he was the guy in the NHL and now like Jarry's coming up to be the backup? Or do you see this now being a situation where the two are going to compete for starts? Like we didn't even know who was going to be the backup at training camp, right? Like it was DeSmith who won the job over Jarry. But I'm really interested to get your take on this. We had patron Brad right in the Facebook group, like he wrote like DeSmith with a heart under the post about how Matt Murray got injured. And I sort of threw up there, like, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but maybe like this is worse for Casey DeSmith to have Jarry there because Matt Murray was being terrible. And Tristan Jarry is someone who maybe the Penguins want to take a look at. So how do you see this situation working out in the short term?
Yeah. So first of all, with Matt Murray, I think he's going to get some more opportunities when he does get healthy. Pittsburgh made a big commitment with him when they let Fleury go to Vegas in the expansion draft. He won him a cup. He put up elite numbers doing so. And so if you're young and you win a team a cup and you put up, staggering results, you're going to get a lot of opportunities. And we saw it with Cam Ward in Carolina. He got a decade's worth. I joked around with you guys on Twitter there saying that, maybe he's the next Cam Ward. I'm not going to say that yet. But I know I was big on Murray. I was hyping this kid up. He was kind of exploded in his development, and he looked like the real deal. I did talk to some goalie experts even a year ago that he was still putting up okay numbers, and they just didn't like what they saw. So something with his mechanics. He doesn't control his rebound so well. That they were saying, the slide is coming. And this is a guy that his last 72 games, he has a .905 save percentage. That's really bad. That's below league average. He's putting up quality starts 40% of the time. So Murray, he's a slippery slope. So people are looking at maybe buy low on this guy when he comes back. He'll be playing on Pittsburgh. They should be challenging for a division title. That's a good win. Like I've even considered it myself, but I think there's probably some safer options out there. When you're looking at DeSmith, he won that job in camp as the backup. He stole the starting job from Murray, so I think he's going to get the lion's share of the starts unless he kind of drops the ball and does it on a consistent basis for a few games. Because I like Jarry. I think he's a really nice goaltending prospect who's right on the precipice of being an NHLer. So if he can jump in there and win a couple starts in a row, I think he can win the confidence and the pendulum can swing onto his side. So if DeSmith is sitting out there, you grab him and you hope you get yourself a free starter on a good team for a little while here. But you got to be wary that Jarry could be coming at any moment. So again, crapshoot net, but ride the hot hand while you can.
Yeah, and it seems like this Pittsburgh team is a whole different team. Lewis is saying here in the chat room, like a whole different team now that Sidney Crosby is back in the fold. This is a team that could win some games. So you once again do want to have that Pittsburgh starting goalie. And maybe there is not one. Maybe like it does seem like the type of situation where why not go back and forth? Like why ride DeSmith into the ground? It'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. But I agree with you. Obviously, it's DeSmith's ball right now. Maybe like more of a 1A, 1B situation in the worst case. Unfortunately, they got Crosby back, but some injury news. Patrick Hornqvist has a concussion, which is a huge bummer. He had been doing great over the past while, getting back into the top six, recently playing with the recently outjured Sidney Crosby on the top line. Though, of course, Patrick Hornqvist's loss is going to be someone's gain as someone gets to get on that top power play. And it has, of course, been Jake Gensel. And he has definitely taken advantage. Actually, yesterday he had a hat trick. None of those goals were on the power play, which just and he also plays, by the way, on the top line with Crosby, and it's been Dominic Simone playing in that other spot. So Gensel's right now in an amazing spot, top line, top power play. With that hat trick yesterday, that brought him to 18 points in 22 games, which is a 67-point pace. I remember, Cam, you were like the big Gensel booster a couple years ago. You may even be the person who introduced him to us on the Facebook group before he even played a game. You were like saying, everyone, watch out for this Gensel guy. He's going to get called up at some point. He's going to be amazing. And you totally called it. Then, last year, I guess a bit of a disappointment compared to the hype. And then this year it didn't start that great. But right now, like, I would tell, like, he must be owned. And I actually have him the cupful and I'm very happy. And I don't even know what advice I could give, but if he's somehow available, people have to run and grab him, right?
Yeah, for sure. I love Jake Gensel. So one of my favorite kind of finds, this is a kid who put up great numbers at the university level, stepped into the AHL at the closing of his one of his seasons there, and put up great numbers in a playoff run in the American League. Went back to the American League and was just putting up a ton of points, a ton of goals, just lighting it up. And you could just see the path just heading up. A great winger to go play with Crosby or Malkin, like, sign me up. So what has held him back, the same thing that's held Ehlers back, is that he didn't get consistent time on the top power play. Now, Ehlers never gets power play one time, but Gensel would kind of be on and off of it, especially with Hornquist. The guy's injured, a quarter of the time usually anyway. So that net front job opens up. But no, for him to play with Crosby in all situations, that's terrific, right? So you can't ask for much better than that. The kid's got a terrific release. It's not the heaviest shot. It gets off the stick quick, and it's very, very accurate. So he's going to score a lot of goals. That feed from Crosby last night, that backhand, like, no look pass right on his stick and in the back of the net. So you're going to see a lot more of that at 5-on-5. I think he can play at a 70-point pace when he's on that top unit. And then when he's not, you're looking more at that 60, 55, 60-point pace. So I just wish that, Hornquist, when he comes back, just slide him on the second unit. Keep Gensel up on that top one. Like, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. And also that I have a bias towards young players in fantasy hockey, so I want to see them succeed rather than someone who's 33 like Hornquist.
Yeah, I'm sure all the Hornquist owners right now are like, Cam, shut up. They don't want to. It depends who you have. That's who you're cheering for. But right now, you throw Hornquist on your IR, and if you can get Gensel, obviously that's amazing. He's really good. And obviously the big benefit of having Gensel is he's playing with Crosby, like you say. And how amazing is this guy, Sidney Crosby, 31 years old, like, not slowing down at all. He's like 9 goals and 15 assists in 19 games, so in line for another amazing season. One day though, it's going to happen where you're not going to be able to go out and see Sidney Crosby live. It's so sad, but you still can now, and that's why I want to quickly segue to our sponsor for this week's episode, the way to go and see Sidney Crosby, which are from our friends over at SeatGeek, because SeatGeek is the best place to buy tickets online. How'd you like that, Cam? This is ridiculous what I'm doing here. I'm trying my best. Okay, getting tickets online can be far too complicated with hundreds of sites and varying levels of reliability. It's hard to know who to trust. That's why SeatGeek is the way to go. SeatGeek pulls millions of tickets into one place. You can easily find the seats you want for a price you're willing to pay. There's nothing quite like being there in person to see Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin before it's too late. And SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for great value. You could sort your tickets by value. You could even it's really fun to just go onto the SeatGeek app and see just like what's going around in your city. Like, I'm actually going to be going to New York over the Christmas, New Year's time. And actually some of the patrons are going to be getting together. So if you haven't seen, check out the Facebook group, the events page. We're going to have a patron meetup on the 27th. But now I'm looking on SeatGeek of what else is going on in New York on the 27th. There's the Blue Jackets Rangers game. Maybe we could go to that game. Kind of an expensive ticket, $185, but I'll bet you it's a lot more if you try to buy it. It's probably like sold out, but you get a ticket there on SeatGeek. Apparently WWE is going to be there. Of course, the most expensive ticket that I'm seeing in New York. Want to take a guess? Cam, what's the $700+ ticket if you want to go to see it in New York off of SeatGeek?
Oh man, I have no idea.
It's Hamilton.
Oh,
the critically acclaimed musical. So I think it's sold out forever, but somehow you could even get a ticket to that on SeatGeek. And if you don't want to pay $700, but you're okay with paying $680, you actually could get $20 off by being a listener to this podcast. You just have to enter the promo code KEEPING at checkout. And if it's your first purchase on SeatGeek, you get $20 off. So how about that? Check it out, SeatGeek. Their slogan is, Brian usually says this at the end. What is it? You want life's an event. We have the tickets. There it is. Okay, let's get back to the players here. I want to go to some more goalies that are either injured or outjured or something's going on with them. And we got to go to Ben Bishop over on Dallas. He's got a lower body injury. Could be short-term, maybe only a week. But I just want to remind people that I was worried about it. Brian's been here in the chat room, by the way, for a little bit. I wonder if he's still here, because I was saying when we did our almanac over the summer that I feel like Ben Bishop is a bit injury prone. I'd be a little nervous about drafting him. And Brian really poo-pooed me. He threw annoying like numbers at me showing that Ben Bishop hasn't been that injury prone. So obviously he was right. But at the same time, I don't know, something worried me. Here you go. He's injured now. Hopefully he'll be fine. He's a big guy. I don't know. Like I feel, whatever. Anyways, Anton Hudobin had a brutal game versus the Pens on Wednesday. Wasn't much better in the 6-4 win over Ottawa on Friday, but he still got the next start versus Colorado yesterday, and he was solid. He stopped 33 of 36, so can't blame him for that loss. Hudobin was already getting a good number of starts, even with Bishop healthy. It seemed like Dallas was trying to give Bishop a lot of rest. So to me, like Hudobin was already like a decent goalie to own if you want to get starts, and all the starters are already owned. But now with Bishop out, maybe a bit injury prone, seems like he might be a good guy to hold on to. Like, what do you think about Anton Hudobin at this point?
Yeah, he's not bad. He had a .925 save percentage before Bishop went down. So like you said, he was a quality backup to have. He was playing a few more starts than the regular backup would. Yeah, I'm not going to trust him long term, but for a while Bishop's out, he's going to get the starts, and he's going to have a couple of stinkers, and he's probably going to have a couple good games. So that's basically what you're looking at when you have him. So he stole some starts in Boston last year from Tuukka Rask, and we thought that was special. But you're seeing Jarl Halak do it again this year, so maybe that's on Rask. But Bishop is a big guy, and he's not young, so injuries tend to happen at goaltenders when they're in their 30s, and they're these big guys tend to have knee and hip issues at times. So yeah, he's someone that you grab as a third or a fourth netminder on your team, and if Bishop's out, then you're comfortable rolling him out, as Dallas is a pretty decent team. So yeah, I'm all right with Hudobin.
Okay, well, how about this? Let's keep Hudobin on our minds, and then later I'm going to ask you about the Florida situation, and then I'll ask you to compare Hudobin to Reimer. But let's wait on that for now, because while we're on Dallas, so Klingberg has been out, and Brian and I kind of blew because we were like saying Miro Heiskanen is the sure thing to run the power play in his absence. He was already on the top power play before Klingberg got injured, and then Heiskanen was there for a few games, but then he got bumped for Esa Lindell, and then we said, I think it was on last week's show, okay, everyone go and grab Esa Lindell while he's on the top power play, because that's a really great top power play to be running on Dallas, right, with Ben and Seguin and Radulov and Jason Spezza. But anyone who grabbed Lindell was probably disappointed because he was even bumped. Now there's a new guy who seems to be getting a shot. His name is Gavin Bayreuther, who I've never heard of. He's had no points and no shots yesterday. So hard to imagine that this will last. Maybe it goes back to Lindell. Maybe it goes back to Miro Heiskanen. Patron Chris asked me to ask you what you think about this Dallas power play revolving door situation for the QB. Are any of these guys like worth owning? Like, obviously you're going to say that Miro Heiskanen is worth owning in a dynasty league. He's going to be great for years to come. But like for this year, for this situation, if all three of these guys are in free agency, do you rush to grab any of them until Klingberg returns? Or at this point, do you think it's like basically like spinning a roulette wheel? You don't even know which one's going to be there.
I mean, they don't ask me for deployment in Dallas, which they probably should, because I would say Miro Heiskanen should be on that top unit. The guy's a stud. I don't care that he's 19 years old. When you say, quarterbacking that top power play in Dallas is a great spot, and you're absolutely right. And that's what John Klingberg does. He quarterbacks that power play. Like, he is involved. He is a linchpin on that unit. Esa Lindell, when he's on that top unit, is not quarterbacking it. He's not a linchpin. He's just out there, and he's got a decent shot, and he's okay to handle the puck. But he's not doing the things that Klingberg could do. Heiskanen can do the things that Klingberg can do. He's just young, so he's going to make some mistakes. Maybe he's not as confident to pull off some of the moves that Klingberg does, but he's near that level already at his age. Like, he is an amazing player. So watching him in Finland last 2 years, he was the best defenseman in Europe for my money last season, and that's over Rasmus Dahlin, who is the second best. And these are two sub-20-year-old kids. So he's a very, very strong talent. I would have him on that top unit while Klingberg's out. While Klingberg's around, though, I'd have him on that top unit until he stops producing, which is probably years away. So, the other guy is Julius Honka, who has a lot of skills. He's a right shot guy, lots of opportunities the last few years to kind of get sniffs on power play, and he gets sheltered at 5-on-5, and he just hasn't been able to run with it. So you just pull a name out of the hat. Bayreuther isn't a long-term option there, though. He's a decent college player, and he had a nice start in Texas in the AHL, but I don't see him sticking there too long. But yeah, I don't have too much insight on what they're going to do there. I think you see a guy who gets on that unit and the unit scores a few goals, then he's probably going to be on it again the next game until they don't. So.
Yeah, and it's still going to be a little while until Klingberg comes back from his hand injury. So hopefully it'll be soon, and we won't have to worry about it. In the meantime, if you want to try to stream one of these Dallas guys, seems like you're into Heiskanen being the one who maybe has the highest upside if and when he is there. But anyone could get points running that top power play just because of the other guys who are going to be on the ice with them. So I did mention Florida, so let's go to them. Roberto Luongo's hurt again. He aggravated the same knee injury that cost him time earlier in the season. Apparently, he's just day-to-day, so he might not be gone for too long. Luongo's been kind of frustrating, right? He got injured in the first game of the year, and then you probably threw him in your IR. Then he came back and he was great in his first few games. You probably thought, I was such a genius for drafting Luongo, worth the wait. But then he's been terrible lately. So he was great. Now he's bad. Now he's injured again. So a really frustrating time to be owning Roberto Luongo. James Reimer was absolutely terrible while Luongo was out, but had been doing okay in his appearances lately. I actually streamed him in the couple for his game versus Chicago yesterday, and things were looking really good. It was 4-2 for Florida in the third, and then the Hawks stormed back for the 5-4 win. James Reimer did a really great James Reimer impression at the end of that game. Like, hard to imagine that we can tell people to grab Reimer, especially with the news that Luongo's not going to be out long. At the same time, like, if you had to choose right now, you need a goalie on your team, and the best two out there are Reimer and Anton Khudobin. Who would you be reaching for?
Khudobin, probably. Reimer's pretty meh, but someone has to play in Florida when Luongo's out, and I think Reimer can be a league average guy, or maybe just slightly below for stretches of time. They gave him a 5-year contract, so they're not really probably getting rid of him anytime soon. I feel really bad for Luongo. I love that guy, obviously being a Canuck fan and seeing what happened to him here, and him kind of grow into the personality that we all know and love today. That this guy's a Hall of Famer, and he wants to play to the end of his contract, and he just keeps getting injured, and that's really gonna be difficult for him to do. And folks in Vancouver know all about the cap recapture penalty, that if he does retire early, that's coming off their cap for a big chunk. So something to watch for them. But yeah, I'd probably go Khudobin, I guess, if you make me choose, just because he has had a little more success this season, and last season too in Boston, he was pretty strong too. So I'll give the edge there.
Okay, yeah, that seems fair. Yeah, hard to like Reimer. Also really hard to like another former Canuck, because you were saying how much you loved Luongo. What are your thoughts on Corey Schneider right now? He is getting destroyed this year. In fact, today, it is still in the first period, Tampa versus New Jersey, and Tampa's up 4-1. Schneider's only stopped he stopped 5 of 9 shots. Just having a terrible, terrible game. Like, this guy's probably going to get waived at some point. This guy's bad. I actually made a FanDuel lineup just to stack Tampa players when I saw that Schneider was announced. But I didn't even have him lined up to talk about on the show. But do you have the same warm feelings about Schneider as you do about Luongo?
I liked Corey Schneider too. He was one of these guys that I tracked his development coming out of Boston College, and just kind of the perfect development model for a goaltender. Dominate the NCAA, move up to the AHL, kind of get your feet wet, dominate the AHL, move up to the NHL, get your feet wet, and so on. And he was a dominant goalie in the NHL too. He's putting up 920 plus save percentages for consistent years. At the time that the Canucks traded him there too, and everybody was kind of waiting for Gary Bettman to finish his sentence when he said Corey Schneider to the Devils for 9th overall, and I'm waiting. But you make that trade today, Bo Horvat for Corey Schneider, you do that 10 times out of 10. So Mike Gillis must have known what he's doing a little bit there too. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough for Schneider. The injuries obviously have slowed him down a little bit. He's got to be 32, 33 now. So age is caught up too. Keith Kincaid's a bit better than him. So it's tough to watch him kind of decompose so quickly here right in front of us, but it is what it is. When a netminder loses it, you get exposed quickly.
Man, yeah, that is a sad word to use, but accurate. Decompose. Yeah, and obviously it gets especially exposed when you're playing against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Braden Point, by the way, 1 goal and assist. I have him in the cupful. I should be celebrating, but of course I have no chance to win this week because my opponent had stupid Patrick Laine, who gave him like a quarter of his points on the week. So let's not move on. Let's not talk about that. Let's move on. There's actually a bigger injury in Florida to discuss. This very scary leg injury that Vincent Trocheck suffered on Monday. He had surgery on Wednesday to repair an ankle fracture, and he's going to be out a long while. Hopefully, I heard that they're saying he might come back before the end of the season, but it's going to be a long time. Maybe he won't even come back this season. Maybe it depends how Florida's doing at the time in his absence. Anyways, we got to move on. Obviously, really bad for Trocheck. Also, he's really come on as like a stud, especially in multi-category leagues. Tough for his owners, obviously tough for him. A really sad situation. You never want to see someone get hurt like that. But of course, we have to look at the fantasy impact here. And in his absence, it looks like Nick Bjugstad was centering the second line yesterday with Vetrano and Huberdeau on his wings. Jonathan Huberdeau, by the way, has been great this season and even had 2 assists yesterday on the second line, bringing him to 19 points in 21 games overall. But I got to tell you, I'd still be concerned if I was his owner in fantasy, if this is going to be his deployment for the rest of the season, playing with Bjugstad and Vetrano. Do you think people should be worried like me and maybe try to sell high? Like, I feel like you're not going to get like a better return for Huberdeau as you'd get right now with him almost at a point per game? Or do you think that even like he'll be fine? He's Jonathan Huberdeau. He's still on the top power play. He'll be good no matter what.
Well, I like him that he's still in the top power play, so that's going to feed him some points. So the guy's on pace for 35 power play points this year, which would be awesome. That's, top 5 most seasons. That might lead the league some years. The scoring's up these days, so it probably wouldn't this year. But I expect those power play points to slowly dry up a little bit too, so that top unit, it's deadly. So maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I could see him landing more in the 27, 28, maybe 30 power play points. And then, Bukestad is a significant downgrade on Trocheck. So his 5-on-5 production is likely to drive a bit too. So right now he's playing at near a point per game pace. I would definitely be sniffing out the market and see if you could get a guy who's maybe playing a little bit below that, but you can see his arc going up a little bit for the season, has better line mates at 5-on-5 and maybe on an equally or close to as good power play. I don't have any examples off the top of my head, unfortunately for you, but losing Vincent Trocheck is going to be very, very painful for Florida in real life, and for those who play around him in the fantasy landscape. It opened up a top power play spot. Mike Hoffman's playing on the point now. There, they moved the bumper spot around. And, Hoffman playing on line 1 and power play 1, he's in a great spot. And so kind of started the season in Florida on the 4th line. People were thinking he was going to be left for dead with all the drama that happened in Ottawa. And, it's a guy, he showed up and he's putting the puck on net and he's getting points. And so he's someone to watch too, for sure.
Yeah, I already ranted about him last week about how amazing he's doing and how did Ottawa and then San Jose give up Hoffman for so little? It's ridiculous. This guy probably was drafted in fantasy pretty late, especially because we didn't know if he was going to be able to get onto that top power play. So he's been a huge steal, maybe an MVP for teams in terms of value so far. Yeah, he's been awesome. And hey, watch out for Nick Bjugstad. I know obviously, like you say, he's a lot worse than Trocheck, but still, if he's playing on the second line, he's going to be maybe getting more minutes. He started the season on line 1, then he got bumped to the 3rd line, and it was looking okay, I guess it's time for everyone to forget about Bjugstad, but now he's going to be on the second line. So if you're in a super deep league, there's worse guys to own. And hey, Florida plays Monday, Wednesday next week. So you could always try him out for a couple of games and then drop him if you need to. Okay, I guess we're still on goalies. I still have some more I want to bring up to you. So Philly, just a terrible situation, right? Alex Lyon is now injured. So you add him to the list with Elliott and Neuwirth. Everyone's basically hurt on Philly. So the current pair of goalies they have are Calvin Pickard and Anthony Stolarz. I don't even really want to talk about Pickard and Stolarz. They're probably not great. You could play Pickard or whoever at your own risk. Pickard shut out the Rangers on Friday, so that was good. Then he got destroyed by the Leafs yesterday. I feel like that's what you're going to be expecting moving forward, except maybe fewer shutouts. But every once in a while, he'll have a good game, of course. I did hear that Neuwirth could be back soon, but let's be reasonable here. He's probably going to be back for a period and then get injured again. So you don't want to be pinning any hopes on him. And since you're the prospect expert, I'd be love to know what's your take on Carter Hart. Is he, because I feel like everyone talks about him as one of the top goalie prospects out there. Do you think that he could potentially get called up this season as a savior because no one on the Flyers could stay healthy and play well?
He could. They could call him up because it's just so tragic there, but I absolutely would not. So I took a lot of heat in the summer here as Philly fans and fantasy people were just kind of piling on, give Carter Hart the starting job in Philadelphia right now. He was amazing in Everett for his whole WHL career, great for Team Canada, put up otherworldly numbers in the dub. And that's great. He's a really nice prospect. I have him, top 5 goalie prospect for fantasy, top 5 goalie prospect in the world, arguably top 3. But he's 20. There's a real reason you don't see 20-year-old starters in the NHL too often. What's the last one? Steve Mason, and where's he playing right now? So he's not even in the league anymore. Marc-Andre Fleury, first overall pick, Luongo, guys like that. So very, very rare, and more rare as we're getting further away from those first overall picks as tendies. So I really like Carter Hart, but the guy's playing in the AHL right now, and he's got an .884 save percentage in 12 games. So that does not scream that he's ready to step up into that porous Philly defense and be a savior for this team. What it would be is that they lose more games. He's going to make some stops. He's going to let in some goals. His confidence is going to get shook a little bit more than it probably already is, eating up an .884 in the AHL already. So why risk it? This kid, if you develop him properly, could be a stud. I would leave him in the American League despite what happens, unless everybody's injured and you have to call him up. And you can't pick up any on waivers. I'd leave him down there for next season too, until he was doing what Corey Schneider was doing and dominating the AHL. Leave him down there, bring him up when he's 22, and you got yourself a really nice starting goaltender if everything goes right. So that would be my plan with him.
Okay, well, so we'll have to see if that's Philly's plan. It seems like they should do that, especially since you say he's not even playing well right now in the minors. So what's the point of bringing him up? These goalies on Philly are getting embarrassed, especially when they're playing a team like the Leafs, like they were yesterday. So I don't know, no advice here, like that I could even think of. If you want to stream a Flyers goalie that's healthy, do so at your own risk. We do not condone starting Flyers goalies if you have a save percentage or goals against average to be worried about. But since we're on Philly, I've got 3 slumping players I want to run by you. So skaters now, and get your take on if you think the sadness will continue or if maybe some good times are ahead. Patron Jade, also one of the members of Average Time on Ice, one of my new favorite Twitter accounts and blogs. So she asked us to talk about Jacob Voracek. She put a sad face emoji beside his name, telling me exactly what she wanted me to ask. Obviously, the dude is pointless in 5 games now, was actually at a near point per game pace before this cold stretch, but he also actually has only 1 shot on goal in 3 of these last 5 games. So kind of concerning, maybe. Like, are you worried about Voracek, or do you think this is just a little blip?
I'm a little bit concerned with Voracek. So he's never been a huge shooter, but he usually hangs around 3 a game, and now he's hanging around 2. That's going to cause a little bump down. Last season he played about 40% of his even strength time with Giroux. This year it's about half of that so far. He's playing on a line with Nolan Patrick, who's also kind of cold. He's not getting top power play all the time too. So it's tough. He kind of goes back and forth between a point a game season and a 60-point pace. And so for the last 5 or 6 years, he's literally done that. So he's, played at 65 points, played at 85 points, played at 60 points, played at 80 points. And right now he's running on one of these seasons where he's probably going to play at a 65-point pace for the majority of the season. I think he can have stretches where he's going to be a PPG guy, and then another stretch like we're in right now where he's going to be ice cold. So if you're hoping that he's going to rebound and really fly up the rankings and end up with 75, 80 points, I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think he's a safe player that when that top power play unit and he's on it is rolling, he's going to get some points. And if he gets bumped up and he gets to play with Giroux, that's going to be great too. But that second line isn't my favorite. And unfortunately, I've got him in my league too. And he's riding the bench. And when he gets in there, he's not helping me too much. So, you can't do much with him right now. You're not going to be able to trade him for anything. His value is going to be low. So you just kind of sit and wait. And if he gets hot and you think you can get something for him, flip him or just ride him and kind of treat him like the stock market. Get him in there when he's moving and pull him out when he's not.
Right. So you're not saying that it's like time to consider dropping him or anything. Like, he's cold now. He'll get hot again at some point soon. It's like, like I said, he was doing so well before this recent stretch. So you got to imagine it's going to happen again. Obviously, there's a few people on Philly that are struggling right now, including Voracek's line mate, 2017 second overall pick, Nolan Patrick, who's playing with Voracek, but he's actually pointless in 6 games. And he had a really strong second half last season. And then that finally a healthy summer for him where he was able to train like we thought he normally would. And Brian and I both thought that Nolan Patrick could be a really good sleeper coming into this year. Not looking great right now. Do you think that Patrick will bounce back, or is it time for him to get dropped in 1-year leagues?
Yeah, I could probably see him getting dropped in 1-year leagues. He's young and he was drafted 2nd overall, so keeper league guys probably are going to be more interested in holding on to him. He's one of these guys that despite his lofty draft slot, I didn't project him to have a really high ceiling. I thought that if things broke right for him, he'd be a really, really good second line center that could put up 60, 65 points. And that's very valuable in real life, not so much in fantasy. I likened him to Bo Horvat. But Horvat has taken massive strides every single year, where Patrick, he peaked at like 16, 17 in the WHL when he put up 102 points or whatever it was on a Great Brandon team. And he's kind of just been either sitting where he was, and he's had a couple of bring ups, but it hasn't been a really strong trajectory for him. So he's off that top power play unit too. Not a great spot at the moment playing with a cold Voracek. So I got no problem dropping him to the wire. And if he sits there for a bit, pick him up if he wakes up. And if not, then, that's okay too.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, like you were comparing it to Bo Horvat, but Bo Horvat gets that top power play, unlike Nolan Patrick's. That's obviously a huge difference. And last year, Patrick got on the top power play when Simmons got injured, but now he's got two players in his way because there's JVR there as well. So it's not looking like he's going to be getting on that top power play anytime soon. Then the third player I wanted to bring up is Ivan Provorov, who's pointless in 6 and only has 7 points in 23 games overall on the season. Last year, Provorov had 41 points to go along with all the peripherals that everybody loves about him. Currently, he's only on pace for 25 points. So like, peripherals, schmeriferals, if you're not getting points, there's a bunch of guys who get hits and blocks and no points. Is Provorov just one of them, or do you think he can get back on track, get back to his 41-point pace that he had last year?
Yeah, I think he can push for 40 points. That he's another player, very Miro Heiskanen like, where he's tremendous real life player. You throw him on a top power play unit and let him run wild. I think he can put up 50, 55 points, but he's probably not going to bump Ghost off that top unit and decrease Gostisbehere's value to the team. So it's kind of this he's stuck in the middle a little bit. And right now he's not really pushing the needle to get that opportunity, even though Ghost is cold right now. So this is probably his best chance that if he was running hot, he might get a look on that top unit, but it's not happening right now. So yeah, I think he can play at a 40-point pace, just by putting up strong, even strength numbers, but Philly's not playing too well. They're not putting up points. Last year, a lot of guys were getting a lot of unsustainable shooting percentages. Giroux had the career year. A lot of things went right for them. And that helped him push his 5-on-5 numbers. So, you're probably looking at a guy who's going to play at more of a 30, 35-point pace the rest of the way. And that's going to be where he lives at until he gets top power play unit deployment. Side note for with Ghost is that, their power play is better than this, and he can be better than this too. And so he'd be another good buy low opportunity. I think I'd take a swing on him if you can get him for, somewhat cheap.
Yeah, definitely. With Gosberg going into the season, everyone saw him as like a potential 70-point guy. It hasn't been great so far, but I agree with you. You got to imagine this Philly power play and everything is going to bounce back a little bit. I don't know if they're going to get wins. I wonder if they have to play more conservatively because they can't depend on their goalie. I feel like I've heard this theory before where if you know that there's a good chance that anytime you let in a scoring chance, your team is likely to let it in because the goalie sucks, then you can't play as aggressively. But I mean, at the same time, Claude Giroux and Voracek, these guys have been getting points for years after year, and it's been a long time since they've had a goalie they could rely on. I guess Steve Mason, 3-4 years ago now. So I don't know. It's tough, but I agree with you to maybe go for Ghost Bear. And as far as Provorov goes, we actually had an interesting question on our Facebook group, wondering if the owner should drop Provorov for, I think it was Sami Vatanen, who's also on the second power play in New Jersey, but he has been actually producing. And Provorov has not. And I was thinking wow, it's surprising, but at this point, I feel like it's pretty close. So I don't know. I'm not super high on Provorov right now. But I feel like I'd still hold him. I don't know. I feel like so. What do you think about Vatanen versus Provorov? Is it just kind of a coin flip?
Yeah, I'm probably taking the guy who's playing the more power play minutes. And so if that's Sami Vatanen, then that's who I would want. And he's always been an offensive guy. He put up huge numbers in Finland, and he was always supposed to be the guy in Anaheim. And, he would always be hurt, but he put up 39 points in 65 games or whatever it was, just to kind of never break that 40-point plateau, but he'd always tease you with it. So yeah, I'm picking the guy who's ever getting more power play time. And as far as, having a weak netminder and that kind of affecting the way teams play, I think you're right. It can go one of two ways. They can either clamp down and play a little bit more of a trap because they don't trust their goaltender, or they say, screw it. We got to score 4 if we want to win this thing on any given night, maybe 5. So let's just open it up and let's wheel. And so I think that was happening a little more last season. And this year it's maybe not happening as much, but everybody hopes that they just open it up and play fire wagon hockey and let's see what they can do, but we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, that would be more fun to watch. Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess you could also call that the Ottawa Senators approach from this year. For sure, they're scoring a lot of goals and letting in a ton of goals. I think I have them lined up to talk about this week, but we're not on them now because I'm on some goalies. So Petr Mrazek is back for Carolina. He is not injured anymore, but he hasn't played yet. He backed up Scott Darling yesterday. He got to have a front row seat to watch Scott Darling put up another terrible start in a 4-1 loss to the Islanders. Darling now is up to an .892 save percentage in 7 games. Meanwhile, actually, Curtis McElhinney has been amazing in his last 3 games. He led in only 4 goals total over his last 3 games. He's up to a .919 save percentage on the season. So it's like now Mrazek is back. He's going to try to improve on his .880 save percentage that he has so far. McElhinney's been good. Darling's been terrible. I'm really curious to get your thoughts on how you think this whole situation is going to shake out. Which goalie would you even want out of these 3 if you could only have one? Carolina could be a good team if they could get some goals. And we've been saying this forever, but who knows which of these goalies can run with it right now? Crazy as it is, it kind of looks like it's McElhinney. Is it possible Scott Darling could get waived? Do any of these guys get waived? They can't waive McElhinney now, right?
No, they can't. Well, they can waive him, but Toronto will get first pick on him again. I believe that's who he was with last year. So if they do waive him, they'll get first crack to take him. And then if nobody else puts a waiver claim in, then he can go straight to the AHL. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I meant more not they can't waive him legally. I meant how can you waive the only goalie that's playing well for you?
Oh yeah, for sure. But they might do that because Mac is a career backup and he's in his 30s and he's just not someone that you're going to be trusting long term with your franchise. But my goodness, if it was me, he's the guy I'm starting right now. So he played well in Toronto. He's played well in Carolina, as you said, close to a .920 save percentage. Darling has been dreadful now for this is his second year of being terrible. He was good on a Chicago team as a backup in limited deployment. He was running a hot streak and he got himself that contract. So yeah, if Carolina waived him, I don't know. I doubt anyone picks him up with that contract. I would be very surprised if anyone picked him up. So maybe he needs that wake up call. Maybe he needs to go to the minors and work some stuff out. Peter Mrazek is a little bit younger. He had the great pedigree. He was one of those guys that I thought I sniffed out another diamond in the rough. I loved him in the Detroit system. I thought he was going to be a real player for them and going to be the goalie of the future. And the wheels kind of fell off the last couple seasons. And as you see, he's bounced around a few different organizations and he hasn't really put it together. But I think Carolina maybe has a little more time for him because he is a bit younger and maybe he could be the guy. I'm not believing it anymore. Right now, it's heartbreaking to watch because, as you said, Carolina could be a good team. You throw a solid veteran netminder or a good up-and-coming guy like Antti Raanta they could have gone after. And I love it. I'd be all over grabbing someone like that. So if they ever do make a move for a goaltender, like sign me up. I'll take a swing on them. But these three guys, Mac would be the guy I'd roll out there. Whoever puts up over a 900 save percentage, I'd put him out the next game and just keep on going. And if they drop and they put up an 875 or an 840, next guy gets to go. And, you just kind of roll that way. I imagine they'll probably keep all three for a little bit here and go with the carousel.
Yeah, I guess they kind of have to, right? Until someone earns a spot. Maybe McElhinney has at least to not be waived and to be the backup or 1A, 1B right now. And I kind of like Mrazek as someone, like maybe a sleeper guy you could grab probably out of free agency and fantasy right now. Don't go in with huge expectations, but I feel like I'm pretty much done with Scott Darling. I'm kind of feeling similar to him as I do about Corey Schneider right now, where I would be stacking the other teams in my daily fantasy leagues every chance I get when that goalie's playing. And Mrazek's been not great, and Brian will make fun of me here because I was the one saying how Mrazek sucks at the start of the year. And not that I have changed my mind that much, but I feel like he at least has the potential to be a good goalie. We've seen him be a good starting goalie in the NHL a couple of years ago. Maybe he's had time now with this injury. Like I said about what I was hoping for with Matt Murray, right? Get his head right, figure out what he was doing wrong, and maybe play well. Though he did have all of last summer, and that didn't work out for him at the start of the year. So that's my pick. If I had to have one Carolina goalie on my roster for the rest of this season of fantasy, I'm going Mrazek. Who are you going?
Yeah, I'll probably go Mrazek too, but I'm not going to go with any of them, to be honest. Yeah. that's a good pick if you put a gun to my head, though.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe in a league where it only counts wins and saves and you don't get dinged for goals against. Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned Antti Raanta. He is back for Arizona. He was injured for a little bit. Great news for them, you would think, because Darcy Kemper is injured. So I guess they just take turns being on and off the team. Of course, Raanta wasn't great in his return. He let in 5 goals on 39 shots versus Colorado. That's a really tough team to return against, the way they're scoring. And then today, he got blown up again against Calgary, 6-1. Calgary destroyed Arizona. Raanta was in for all 6 of those goals against, so not a good return. Are we gonna start to get worried as Raanta owners, saying oh, what is he not good actually, or is this just he's coming back from injury? Clearly, maybe he wasn't fully ready, or maybe he has to work off some rust or something. Because I feel like he could be a really great fantasy goalie. We saw last year he was one of the top guys to own, and Arizona eventually won a bunch of games in a row at the end of the year once he got going. So yeah, are you concerned about these 2 bad losses for Raanta, or do you think now's a good time to buy low if anything?
Yeah, if you can buy low on them, yeah, sign me up for sure. I like Antti Raanta. I like what the Coyotes are doing. They're slowly building. I did an article for Dauber Hockey there a few days ago, or earlier last week, and I kind of looked at year to date. So in 2018, and he leads all netminders in save percentage in all since last January. So that's really strong. I think his value still is going to come up in the future. So like I said, I like what Arizona's building. I think they're going to be a good team, and I think he's going to be a big part of that. So in a keeper league, I'm definitely interested in picking him up. In a 1-year league, I think they're going to be okay. They're going to kind of be a middling team that might fight for a playoff spot until the deadline, and then slide out a bit. But he showed last season, even on a bad team, that he can put up big numbers. So yeah, he's a guy that I'm not too concerned with yet. Coming off an injury, especially playing the Abs there, that first game back, they torch guys that aren't hurt. So yeah, I like Antti Raanta a lot, and one of these guys that I think that if you're in a 1 league, definitely stay patient or go after him if he's not on your team.
Sorry, I couldn't get, for some reason I couldn't click that button to unmute. Okay. Yeah, Yeah, I agree with you. Ranta, I think now would be a great time to try to make an offer if you need a goalie. Like I was saying before, like you go after Jake Allen for cheap, but I'd rather go after Ranta if you could get him for cheap because like he's had 2 bad games and actually Allen's had 4 good games recently. So who knows? Maybe if these owners are really, short memory guys, then maybe you can get a steal of a trade for him because yeah, I would definitely prefer Ranta. So Arizona also had a couple of outjuries last week. A couple defensemen came back to maybe help Antti Ranta. Not that they helped today, but Alex Goligoski and Jacob Chychrun are both back with the team. Neither of them did anything today, like no points. Goligoski had 4 blocks for what's worth. I've always kind of liked Goligoski as a depth D-man in leagues that do count blocks because he usually gets between 35, like around 35 points, and then he's really solid for blocks. So I'd check your free agency if he's available and you need a defenseman in your league counts blocks. Curious to get your thoughts on Jacob Chychrun, who's still really young, only 20 years old. Is there any fantasy upside here, either for this year or in the future?
He's got multi-cat upside, and maybe a little bit for points only. I've undervalued him so far in his career. So he had a ton of hype coming out of coming out of his draft minus 1 year. He was projected to be a top 3 pick, and he had not such a great draft eligible campaign, and he slid, whatever it was, into the late teens to Arizona, and that was a really nice pick for them. And then he made the squad as a teenager, which is great. And so he's one of these guys. He's kind of a physical specimen. So he's in great shape. He's got a big shot. He can hit out there. You can get some shots on net. I think he could be a 40-point guy in the right situation. He's not going to be pushing OEL off that top power play unit, so he's going to have to do what Provorov does, which is put up strong 5-on-5 numbers and then click on that second unit when you can. He's a guy that if you need some categories filled up, I think he's okay. But I'm still not buying that he's going to be a real offensive producer.
Okay, yeah, that seems fair in his situation right now. Oliver Ekman-Larsson not going anywhere. If he ever gets injured, then that would be an interesting situation to maybe jump on one of these guys. But hopefully that'll just never happen. That would be not good for Antti Ranta owners for sure. We've had a lot of people asking us lately if they can drop one of your favorites, at least going into last season, Clayton Keller. So I'm really glad to have you here to talk about him. Going into today, he only had 1 assist in his last 5 games and 13 points in 21 games overall on the season, though I believe he did score Arizona's only goal today. Yeah, an unassisted goal at the end of the game. So there you go. You could add that to pad his stats. But overall, yeah, very disappointing, especially compared to last year. Brian and I pegged him for like 75 points this year over the summer. Like we were super high on Clayton Keller. So far, it hasn't really happened. Are you like lower on him now than you were a year ago, or are you just as high as ever?
Yeah, I'm just as high as ever. The kid's 20. So this stuff happens to young players. It's a difficult league to consistently produce in. He's a highly, highly skilled player. So he's got a lot of Johnny Gaudreau in him. He gets prime ice. Arizona, like I said, they're coming. I think, in the next year, 2, 3 years, they're going to be a playoff team, and they're going to be exciting, and they're going to score a ton of goals. And he's going to be their number 1 offensive option in all situations. So he's a guy that I really, really like. I think he can play at a 70, 75-point pace for stretches this year. He's in a bit of a cold streak right now. And like I said, as a 20-year-old, you got to expect that. Even the superstars will go through streaks when they're that age. So he's one of these guys that I absolutely would be buying low on in a keeper league if you got an opportunity to. In a 1-year league, just kind of hold on. I think he's going to wake up, and he's probably going to end the season in the 60s. I believe he probably hit 60 last year without looking at the numbers in front of me. So I think that's going to be about his floor. He's a high skilled player. I like him a lot.
And if you recall last year, he was the type of guy that would go on runs where he like got points in every games and then would go cold for like 10 games in a row and do nothing. So maybe he's just one of those cold runs right now, and a big hot streak is just over the horizon. So yeah, I agree with you. I'd wait and see. He seems like the kind of guy that if he was dropped in your league and you don't add him, then someone else at some point will just like stream him in for like 2 days, 2 games in 2 days, and then he'll go off, and then that person will keep him for the whole rest of the season. You'll be like, oh my God, how did I not add Clayton Keller when I had the chance? So I feel like I would grab him as well. Though one guy I'm maybe not as confident about on Arizona is Alex Galchenyuk, who's also been cold, but he's been playing lately with pretty much non-factors, and Christian Fischer and Lawson Krause. Like these are not guys I'd want to own the line mate of. Is this like the same situation as Keller where he's going to bounce back and be fine? Or are we approaching a point where we need to consider Alex Galchenyuk a snoozer, at least in 1-year leagues?
Yeah, he's been a snoozer for a couple of years now, to be honest with you. But yeah, way less hype for Gally than I am for Keller. If he's cold, I'm cutting bait. When he's hot, or if he's playing with Keller, then I'm a little more interested in streaming him in. But he's a 45, 50-point guy. That's what he is. He'll have some stretches where he'll play at a higher pace, and then he'll have some stretches at a lower pace. But he's one of these guys. If you can catch him on a run, then sure, I guess if you can time it out. But yeah, I've left him on the wire many times, and I haven't really regretted it at all. So I don't think he's a viable option long term. So he, like I said earlier, you got to play the stock market a bit with him.
Yeah, Brian's in the chat room actually. Brian, go take care of your baby. Maybe everyone's sleeping right now. I'm sure Brian's doing a great job in his day two as a parent. But yeah, Galchenyuk is someone Brian used to really like, and he was very high on him going into this season. And he is saying that he respectfully disagrees with you. He still thinks that Galchenyuk has 60+ point upside. Of course, we'll have to wait and see. You're right that he wasn't able to do it on Montreal, and a lot of people just said that it was because he wasn't getting the respect and the deployment. Though right now in Arizona, he's not getting the deployment. Like for a while, it was Clayton Keller playing with Galchenyuk and Derek Stepan getting bumped, and everyone was really surprised about that. And now it's back to Keller playing with Stepan. Maybe they'll keep shaking things around since Arizona again got destroyed today, so maybe they'll shake up the lines. But yeah, Galchenyuk definitely not seeming as an exciting as an option as I thought he was, a few weeks ago. In fact, we have this patron, Dave Betton, who makes an awesome bonus podcast for our patrons called the Stream Scheme, where he talks about players to add and drop every week based on the schedule. And he said a few weeks back that Galchenyuk could be dropped. And I was like, I called him out on the Facebook group. I was like, Dave, what are you talking about? You're not going to drop Galchenyuk. And now, maybe he was right. It'll be really fun to keep following him. And then once Brian's back, to ask him what he thinks about Galchenyuk. And he could either defend himself or say, I guess Cam's right. I guess Dave's right. Maybe it is time to not have as high expectations about him.
Well, I'll rebuttal for Brian there is that I'm not saying he couldn't be a 60-point player. He could be. He had a lot of skill coming out of junior. And if you lock him with Clayton Keller and Keller's rolling hot, then this, like I said, he's a player that can play stretches at that pace for sure. I just don't see it sustaining. And I've watched people get burned by him too long. That he's at an age now where he's not a spring chicken. He still could improve, and I don't like to put ceilings on players before they're 27 unless they're a late bloomer sort of thing. So he could have a season where he rides some coattails a little bit and has some good fortune and ends up being a 60-point guy. But yeah, for my money, he's more of that 45-50.
Sounds like a lot of ifs there. So that doesn't make me too confident for sure. By the way, Brian has corrected me. He's holding the baby while watching. So there you go. Another use for our podcast, Keeping Karlsson. Even if you're not playing fantasy, might be a good way to keep your baby busy. And maybe the baby will be bored, fall asleep, because what does a baby care about a bunch of random hockey stats? But okay, let's go to one more goalie situation. Not an injury or an outree. I mentioned them at the top of the show. We got to talk about the Buffalo Sabres and Carter Hutton. Hutton has, if Brian's still listening here, this is another guy that I guess Brian and I got wrong at the start of the year. So at least we're correcting ourselves now. We're not like these other media outlets that just forget about anything they said before that was wrong and only talk about what they got right. We're going to have to admit right now, or maybe Brian will say that we were right all along. We just haven't found out yet. But we said that Carter Hutton wasn't going to be that great. He'd never been a good starter in the league. At this point, though, he's won 7 games in a row. The Sabres have actually won 9 games in a row overall. So Allmark took care of the other 2 games. Hutton has an 11-6-1 record and a .919 save percentage on the season. Huge value for anyone who drafted him because they probably got him super late in their drafts. I feel like I wanted to draft Carter Hutton this year because Buffalo was looking really good. I don't know, maybe Brian took me out of it, but I got to take responsibility for my decisions. But Cam, would you have agreed with Brian and I going into the season? And what do you think about Carter Hutton going forward? Maybe a good opportunity to sell high if you have him. If you don't think he'll be as good, you get maybe someone like Ranta or Crawford, and maybe even get a separate upgrade in the deal. Or maybe you just keep riding him high. Like Buffalo, they've got Eichel, they've got Dahlin, who's really hot lately. Everything seems to be clicking. So maybe you just keep riding the wave.
Yeah, a lot of people were looking at Phil Grubauer as the goalie to grab this year as someone who's been a backup and who's going to get an opportunity. I liked Carter Hutton. So, he had a great season with St. Louis last year. I believe he led the league in save percentage. People like Mark to push him. He's younger. He's been in Buffalo for a little bit longer. But, that contract that they gave Hutton and just the way he's performed, I also liked taking a risk on Buffalo taking a step forward. Now, I was not predicting them to be leading the league by December. But, Jack Eichel was going to take a step ahead. They're adding Rasmus Dahlin. So the kid's 18. And, he's not tremendous defensively, but the things he does with the puck and the way he skates, it's going to create things. So they had a young team. Reinhart was going to take a step forward. I didn't like the loss of Ryan O'Reilly. I thought that was going to hurt them a lot, but it hasn't affected them too much yet. But no, so I liked him. I actually wanted to draft him in my league, and he went a little bit before I was comfortable grabbing him. So I didn't. But, he's one of these guys that, he's not going to maintain what he's doing right now, nor are the Sabres. And I say that where they're not going to finish top of the standings. I think they're going to be a decent team. There goes my lights. But I think he's a player that you want to have right now. But if you can sell him in a 1-year league, there we go. Go ahead and do that. And if you can sell him for someone who's an elite starter sort of thing. And in a keeper league, I would grab him for Antti Ranta or someone like that. No problem with his age. But it's one of these situations where people probably aren't going to buy on it anyways because he's been a career backup and because they expect Buffalo to slide down the standings. So just ride him while you can. And I think he's going to be a useful goaltender for a lot of teams.
Yeah, I agree with you. And this Buffalo team looks really good. Yeah, why trade him? Like you say, like people aren't going to be paying super high for Carter Hutton, so why not just ride him while you can? And Rasmus Dahlin, by the way, like a big reason again for why Buffalo is starting to win these games. Like they always, like last year and the last couple of years, has been like Rasmus Ristolainen playing 1,000,000 minutes a game because they didn't have another defenseman who could do anything. Dahlin's now got 8 points in his last 8 games. We had a question on Facebook, like, can he keep this up? Like obviously long term, you've already been on record saying like you're in love with Dahlin. But like for this year moving forward, like Elias Pettersson has been running away with the Calder race, but Dahlin coming on strong right now. I'm not saying that he's going to catch Pettersson, but do you think he could be like a 40, 50 point defenseman this year? Like you were sort of iffy on it going into the year when we talked to you right after the draft, but the way he's going right now, like this guy's looking like a stud.
He is absolutely a stud. And so I predicted him to put up, I think on my projection sheet, I had him at 41 or something like that. And I think that would be a tremendous rookie season for an 18-year-old. But now I also thought that Ristolainen would see the lion's share of that top power play unit, and Dahlin's been taking it too. And he's been doing well. And like you said, 8 points in 8 games. You can see the confidence is kind of growing a little bit, the creativity. I was listening to the 31 Thoughts pod there, and they were talking about some of the film that they were watching in the Sabres in their TV room there, and they were just watching plays of Dahlin, and the players all these veterans were just like laughing out loud with how ridiculous this kid is with his skill level. So I think that right now he's playing at about a 40-point pace, but the early season struggles are probably gone now. They're roping him in a bit. I think they're going to slowly let the horse out of the stable, and he's someone that could play at a 50, 55-point pace for long stretches or even the rest of the year and end up in that, kind of high 40s, mid 40s. So he's a difference maker already at this age, and he's one of these guys that, a legitimate PPG upside from the blue line is so rare. You can't really predict those ones too often. They just kind of come out of nowhere. A little bit like Burns and Karlsson, you didn't predict them when they were that age. So he's a horse and one that you definitely want. He's going to make a big difference, and he's helping out Carter Hutton. The putting up points on the board is going to help that goaltending situation to maintain.
Yeah, a lot of people had the opportunity to grab Rasmus Dahlin earlier in the year, like in one-year leagues. He got drafted because of the hype, and then he was slow after the start, and he got dropped in a lot of leagues. And I'm sure he's been added in all leagues by now. If not, definitely grab him in your one-year league if he's available in free agency, because he is coming on strong. And hey, not to say that Rasmus Ristolainen is chopped liver. He has 4 points in his last 4 games as well. So right now, there's a lot of wealth to go around with Buffalo doing so well. But definitely, it seems like Dahlin has eclipsed Ristolainen as the Buffalo Sabres defenseman to own in fantasy. I don't think there's a question about that right now. And that was something we debated a lot over the summer, but I think it's been answered. Let's go to another coaching change. So we talked about St. Louis firing their coach. We had another coach fired this past week. Todd McClellan was bounced by the Oilers. Ken Hitchcock was hired to replace him. There were some interesting practice lines yesterday. Actually, Edmonton's playing today, so by the time people listen to this, they'll know if this came to bear. But apparently Ryan Spooner was up with McDavid and Draisaitl on line 1. So I guess you could say goodbye to Kajula and hello Spooner as the latest hot Oilers streaming option, because you definitely want a player playing with both. For most of the year, McDavid and Draisaitl have been separated, but if they're playing together, you definitely want to have that guy who's the third on that line. So yeah, what do you think? Is Spooner now a guy that you would be looking at? Of course, as I say this, probably the lines are already changing because this changes so often.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I think Hitchcock likes a player like Kajula. He's not an overly big physical guy or like a physically big player, but he plays physical and he plays kind of that heavy game that Hitch enjoys. And he's got a bit of speed too. So I think Kajula, I'm sure Hitchcock is just trying out some things, seeing who fits where. Spooner's kind of more of a perimeter player. He's got good hands. But I'm not sure, is Draisaitl the one doing the digging in the corner for you? Is McDavid? I probably don't need that happening. So I prefer a player who can kind of get their hands dirty a bit over Spooner. So we'll see. But you're absolutely right. Whoever's playing on that top line, and if they're getting sustained opportunities up there, then that's going to be huge. So I broke down that coaching change, and people were immediately saying that, there goes McDavid's Art Ross trophies, and Hitch is going to rein him in and all this stuff. And like, sure, Hitchcock went to Dallas and he demanded more from Tyler Seguin. And that's fair because Tyler Seguin didn't play all that well in the defensive end, and he needed to become a more well-rounded player. And it worked. And Seguin has nothing but good things to say about Hitch. He challenged him, and he's a better player for it. McDavid led the league in takeaways last year. The guy is literally the best player on the planet with a bullet. You don't put restrictions on a player like that. He's already playing 22 minutes a night. Is Hitch really going to shave off 2 or 3 even strength minutes to throw him on the PK more, or is he going to dump him in the defensive zone for faceoffs more often? It's like, no, he's not. If he's smart, he's not. The guy I was a little worried about was Leon Draisaitl, because if they decided to put Nugent Hopkins with McDavid as it was early on in the season, then that means Draisaitl is your number 2 center, and I could see Hitch coming down heavy on him to play a little more responsible because, Draisaitl, he's a good player, he's a heavy player, but he can get a little lackadaisical in his own end. So it'll be interesting to see if they keep him and McDavid together. I love it. I want that. I want to see it. Great for points, great for both players, not good for Nugent Hopkins. But if Draisaitl does move down to that 2C spot, it'll be interesting to see. You might see some yelling matches at practice or on the bench with him and Hitch, and that'll be fun to watch too. But the third wheel on that line, sign me up if they're playing it and they're getting sustained minutes, because those two together, it's the nuclear option in Edmonton, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that would be so weird if Hitchcock was going to Connor McDavid like, oh, I have some notes on how you've been playing lately. I think I think you need to make some changes. That would be insane. Then, of course, there's a couple other things I want to talk about in Edmonton. I guess the goalie situation now might be a bit of a reset. I've been seeing people saying, like, it seemed like Koskinen had stolen the job from Cam Talbot. Maybe now it's a fresh start, and both goalies again have to earn it. Koskinen's been good. Talbot's been bad. Talbot's going to be playing today, so I'll be interested to see if he plays well. Hey, Mike Smith played today after not playing for a while, and he had a good game. Of course, it was against Arizona, who can't score a goal right now. But yeah, I wonder if Cam Talbot will follow suit and have a good game himself.
Well, he's getting himself a nice opportunity too. They're playing the Kings, who just played last night and put up a stinker, dare I say, against the Canucks, who are not a great team either, and lost to them in their own barn. And Vancouver had been playing the night before too, so a tired Canucks squad. So he's gonna get a good opportunity here to show up against the Kings. They might be hungry too, though, so we'll see. But for my money, I think unless Talbot puts up a huge night tonight, I think it is Koskinen. I think he's been the better goaltender. And Hitches knows, he knows, he's been around the block. You play the guy who's doing well, and that's been Koskinen this year. And Talbot, he only had a short window of being a legitimate starter in this league, and it was not even a full season. So I'd be concerned as a Talbot owner with Koskinen coming in there, but at the same time, this guy, he put up good numbers in the K. It's unlikely he's going to string together 35 or 40 games of really tremendous work. So Talbot will get some opportunities throughout the season to take that job back if he does lose it. But it's one of those ones where, show me a good coach and I'll show you a good goaltender too. So coaches will like to ride the hot hand.
Interesting. That's funny. I like that saying. Hey, you were talking before about how Carolina might need someone. I've been seeing rumors that maybe Edmonton, because I think Talbot's a free agent at the end of the year. Maybe if Koskinen's playing well, maybe there's a nice fit. So there you go. There's a trade rumor I've just thrown out there that now maybe some beat writer could tweet and be like, rumors have it that Edmonton's going to be trading Talbot to Carolina. But I like it. Make it happen. And then maybe Edmonton could get back a defenseman. Maybe Jacob Slavin. I've got it all worked out. Okay? Everyone wins.
Yeah, good luck getting Slavin for Talbot. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Maybe this is more of an Oilers fan talking. But actually, okay, there is one player on Edmonton that I really need to bring up. Brian's actually saying here in the chat room, he's asking about him. So it's really weird to be doing a podcast and having Brian in the chat room giving me notes as we go here. But Oscar Klefbom, okay, what do we do with this guy? Like, he's been, like, everything we were expecting from him in terms of deployment he's getting. He's been the top power play guy all year long. He's been playing over 25 minutes a night, averaging 3 shots per game, which is really good for a defenseman, but somehow has 0 goals and only 8 assists in 22 games going into today. Like, to me, like, all signs point to him being due. Like, all signs point to me saying, when people ask me, like, should I drop Klefbom for this guy or that guy? And I'm always saying, no, you got to hold on to Klefbom. He's top power play, plays big minutes, he shoots. Like, it's all the things I look for, but the production just isn't there. Like, is there a point where I need to start recommending for people to drop Klefbom even while he's in this good spot? Or is it just a matter of you have to just kind of hold him forever because he's due for a breakout any time?
I just dropped him. I dropped him in my I feel no remorse. Maybe the only remorse I have is that I probably could have got a draft pick if I tried to trade him out there a couple weeks ago, 5 or 6 weeks ago. But yeah, no, it's the waiting on a Klefbom breakout is the equivalent of chasing the dragon. You're never getting enough. It's never enough. It's never quite there. So he's he's not a main factor on that top power play on it. So he's out there, he's touching the puck sometimes, but he's definitely not a kind of a key part of that unit. It goes off of McDavid on the half wall. If he needs to use the point, he will, but they like to work it down low a lot. And so that's kind of eating up into any of his power play assists. I want to say the same thing. If I didn't have him and he was sitting on the wire and I was looking for a D-man, I'd be like, ooh, a top power play defenseman playing with McDavid, I'll take a chance on that. And I'm sure someone will in my league now that he's sitting there. But it's just, he at some point, you got to produce. You got to shit or get off the pot, basically. So I'm not holding my breath for Klefbom to be putting up a bunch of points anytime soon. I think he could and should play at a 40-point pace with that deployment. He just hasn't done it. So, I let him go.
Yeah, that's sad because also all the shots, right? Like 0% shooting percentage so far this year. So that seems low, but I get what you're saying. I wonder now with a new coach, is Klefbom's job potentially in jeopardy if he doesn't pick it up? Like maybe another defenseman. Didn't the Oilers just trade for Weidman from the Sens? I don't know if he'd be the next guy in line, but like they do have, I mean, they don't really have that many great options to be honest, but maybe Darnell Nurse. I don't know.
Weidman's an offensive player. You never know. He could put up there and, he might be a little more creative than Klefbom too. But yeah, like I said, at some point you got to produce. But if the unit itself is doing well, their Hitch probably won't mess with it too much. And Klefbom is their best defenseman. So his place there is probably pretty secure. But like I say, if he's not putting up points, he can only hold on for so long. And I think 20 games is a decent sample size for a player that, if he goes off and you missed out on him, then that happens sometimes too. But if there's a better option out there, like even a guy like Jeff Petrie, who his top power play might be in jeopardy with Shea Weber coming back, but I actually think he's going to hold on and produce more than Klefbom, even if he's off that top unit. So if there's a guy like that sitting on the wire, I'd be making the swap.
Wow, so interesting. Okay, I'm going to say to anyone listening to the show, that's probably going to now be like, okay, should I drop him finally now that Cam said I should? Like maybe I'd love to just give it one more week if we can, just to see with the new coach if anything changes. But yeah, we're very close. As Dave would say on Stream Scheme, he's on notice. He's on extreme notice right now. But yeah, tough. I don't know, tough for me to let him go. I guess you have bigger guts than I, Cam, for finally cutting the cord there. Okay, let's go into a bit of a lightning round now. A whole bunch more players I wanted to get to before you tell me that it's time to let go, though. If you say you have to go, then you don't get to talk about Elias Pettersson. So that's my only way of being able to keep you here. But okay, let's try to get through these guys. Yesterday, Ilya Kovalchuk played in the bottom six for the Kings with Hagelin and Kempe, though apparently Hagelin's injured now, so who knows who he'll be playing with next game. But yeah, Kovalchuk also wasn't even on the top power play. Tyler Toffoli took his spot there. So after a solid start to the season, Kovalchuk is now pointless in 8 games. I feel really bad about this because I was high on him in the offseason. Clearly, I was wrong. Tell me if I'm crazy. Is it time to ring the snoozer alarm on Ilya Kovalchuk? Like, he's a bottom 6, non-top power play guy, pointless in 8. Obviously, there's upside there, but obviously he doesn't have what he used to. And I don't know, he'd be a really tough hold right now for me.
Yeah, for sure. So I wasn't buying the hype as much as some people. So I think I put him at low 50s on my projection there. He's looking around, Dmitry Filipovich tweeted that out, that, he's looking around LA and he's like, I've made a huge mistake. Signing that contract there, he wanted to play with Anze Kopitar, never had an opportunity to play with a centerman like him in the NHL. And so why not? It's California, it's sunny. They got Doughty, they got Kopitar, they got Quick. Maybe they can make a run here on their last legs with that veteran core, and it is not working out. I don't think LA is as bad as they've been playing. But also Willie Desjardins stepping in as the coach probably isn't great for that team for this season. So I like Willie D. I think he's a good guy, and he kind of got a rough ride in Vancouver. But he loves to jumble his lines. He doesn't really roll them too deep, and they don't create a ton of offense on his team. So Kovalchuk, he's snoozing, and I wouldn't be holding on too long. So he's a player that's got that elite shot. Sometimes still, he had it in the KHL and he'll flash it in the NHL still, but his legs aren't what they used to be. And unless he's playing with Kopitar and Kopitar is moving and shaking, that I'm not super interested in him.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And you say like he came because he wanted to play with Kopitar. Now he's playing with Adrian Kempe. So not exactly what he was hoping for. That's funny. And were you throwing some shade there when you were like, I wasn't as high on him as some people? By some people, I assume you mean me. All right, everyone. I apologize. Hopefully no one drafted Kovalchuk too high because of me. There's another guy I wanted to ask you about on LA. Who is this Matt Luff character that has scored in 3 straight games for the Kings? Patron Chris asked me to ask, what's a Matt Luff? So do you have any idea? He has 3 goals on 4 shots in his last 4 shots, right? Bottom 6, no power play time. He's got to be just a nobody that's hot right now. We're never going to mention him again on the show, right?
Oh, no way, man. Totally sustainable metrics. 3 goals on 4 shots, bottom 6, no PP time. That's the guy I shoot for in fantasy. No, yeah, he's a late bloomer. He had a decent OHL career, put up some points there, but he's not for real. It's a good story for this week, but yeah, no, don't be going and getting Luff.
Yeah, I wonder how many people got in on these 3 goals from Luff. If you did, congratulations, you win the fantasy award from last week. You are a brilliant genius. So Brian made a bet with Daniel Negreanu recently that I think it was kind of a confusing bet, but it was basically Alex Tuch versus Max Pacioretty. It was sort of like a layered bet. It was like Brian will change his mind about Alex Tuch over Pacioretty, but let's just simplify it. Basically, the bet was like who's going to be the better fantasy owner come the end of the season. Got to give Brian actually a lot of credit. He's stuck to his guns on Pacioretty. While everyone else was saying like Pacioretty sucks, Daniel Negreanu was saying like no, Pacioretty's terrible, but like Brian said no, he'll be good, he'll be fine. And hey, look at this, 6 goals and 3 assists in his last 7 games. So Max Pacioretty is on fire. Anyone who hung on to him or grabbed him from free agency or bought low on him is definitely loving life right now. Obviously, the second line of Pacioretty, Alex Tuch, and Cody Eakin is on fire. They're all benefiting. And yeah, you can't exactly say that Daniel got it wrong because Alex Tuch is up to 17 points in 17 games. So he's holding up his end of the bargain, and he's fantastic. He's playing like a superstar here. Maybe it's just like a wash at this point. Like, do you have a take on who's going to win this bet here? Like, who's better between Alex Tuch and Max Pacioretty? Or maybe it doesn't even matter. Maybe it's just a matter of saying both of these guys are worth owning in your league. And if you get either one, you're loving life. They're both on the top power play. They're both on the same lines. You can't imagine their fortunes being too separate right now. Though, hey, as a prospect expert, maybe I should ask you to focus more on Alex Tuch. Has he ever been on your radar as a prospect with upside? Because he right now, like I said, 17 points in 17 games. Daniel Negreanu tweeted us just today saying Alex Tuch has been like the best player on the ice from his vantage point, like the whole ever since he came back from his injury. This guy can't stop getting points.
Yeah, so if you'd asked me this right after Patches landed in Vegas and said, points only, who's going to get more, the safe answer would have been Pacioretty because he's got the history. But, what we've seen in the early portion of the season, and even with Tuch having a little bit of injury there, I'm going with my boy Daniel Negreanu. So, he's got 500,000 followers and he pumps out my work sometimes. So I got to go with him, right? But no, I like Tuch. I like him a lot. He's always been a good player. He was a high draft pick. I think he was 19th overall or something like that, top 20 anyways. It was interesting, though. He was on the American World Junior team one season as a 18-year-old, and then coming back, supposed to be a veteran on that team as a 19-year-old leader, and got cut, which is pretty rare. The Americans will do it a little more than some other teams, but it was a bit surprising for me. But, it soured some people in the business on him, too. So he went back, though. He had he had some good seasons there in growing up in the States and in college. And then when Minnesota gave up on him, basically a year after they drafted him so high just to keep Jonas Brodin, so they gave up Eric Holla, who scored 20 goals last year and was a strong second-line center for him. And Tuch has just a ton of upside as a power forward. So I like my power forwards young. So they tend to go off a bit of a steep cliff when they hit 29, 30. These guys will slide off. You don't like them too young, though. When they're 18, 19, they haven't figured it out yet. They don't play defensively responsible. Coaches slam them on kind of bottom 6. So Tuch, he's right in that kind of middle meaty zone there where he's getting good deployment. I'd like him if Paul Stastny was on that line. They'd probably be doing even better too. But yeah, he's playing second line. He's got Pacioretty. He's playing on the top unit. It's a good spot for him, and he's a good player. So I don't think he's a superstar. I don't think he's a point-a-game guy, but he's one of these players that could definitely play at a 65-point pace and finish up around that total. Is totally doable. And so I think I'm leaning Tuch here.
Okay, and there you go. And by the way, like you say, like he'd be doing better with Stastny there potentially. But hey, no shade at Cody Eakin, who's stepped in and done really well in Stastny's absence and Eric Howla's absence. So obviously a great opportunity for Cody Eakin, and he's stepping into it after being sort of a guy who every once in a while would get on the top line in Dallas, but generally was a bottom sixer that no one really cared about in fantasy. Another guy on Vegas who's doing amazingly well is someone we recommend for people to add last week, so you don't need to dig too much into him because we already told you to grab Colin Miller once he was getting on that top power play, and he had another great week. If you didn't listen to us, you missed out on another 3 points in 3 games after his 1 goal and 1 assist yesterday versus the Sharks. So yeah, once again, go grab Colin Miller if you can. Like, top power play defensemen are not easy to find. Maybe in Cam's league you could find Oscar Klefbom, but I would rather have Colin Miller.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. So he had that icy start. He was missing Nate Schmidt at evens. And the Vegas, they had unsustainably good luck last year. And early on this season, their metrics were below, so that they're due for some positive regression. And we're starting to see that a little bit. So Jonathan Marchessault has kind of been the only consistent on that team. And even he's been shooting below his percentages at 5-on-5 and his own personal metrics. So I think there's a lot more to give on that team. And I think Colin Miller can be a strong producer on that top power play unit.
By the way, a promotion for the live show. If anyone is here in the chat room, they would see that Michael just wrote a really funny poem about Alex Tuck. So I feel like that's a benefit of joining us live every week. KeepingKarlsson.com/live if you want to see what's going on. Okay, next player on a hot streak that I want to get to is Anthony Beauvillier on the Islanders. He's back in the top 6. If you recall, we talked about a few episodes ago how he got bumped from the top 6, and who was like Kuhnhackl was there? Anyway, we're back to the lines from the start of the year right now. So Beauvillier with Barzal and Bailey, and then Lee with Brock Nelson and Jordan Eberle. And so Beauvillier specifically, though, his goal yesterday brought him to 7 points in his last 5 games. He's also been getting great power play time because the Islanders have split into 2 power play units. It's very interesting, kind of weird, because we always talk about whether Pulock is going to bump Leddy from the top power play, but lately they've been running 1 power play unit with Pulock and Leddy both there, along with Lee, Bailey, and Eberle, which I guess is the top power play, but hard to say considering it doesn't have Barzal. Barzal's been on the other unit, and Beauvillier's been there, and they've both been getting around 50% of the time. So all of that, a long, winding way to say that Anthony Beauvillier seems to be in a really good spot, seems to be taking advantage right now. So would you say that it's time for people to go and jump on him, as he was likely dropped in a lot of leagues after he got bumped from the top 6?
Yeah, if he's playing with Matt Barzal in all situations, I'm buying. So he's another kid. He showed a ton of skill in junior, put up some big points. I talked to a few of the scouts in his draft year, and they saw a lot of Claude Giroux in this guy. So he's got nice upside, but he also plays kind of a gritty, smart defensive game as well too. So coaches don't mind throwing him on a checking line because he can handle himself. He's 21, so he's young, and him and Barzal had some nice chemistry last year. He had a streak there in the third quarter where he put up 17 points in 21 games next to Barzal. So yeah, if they're playing together and they're clicking, I am definitely all on board. So I like Anthony Beauvillier.
Yeah, and we would see, I remember back in the day, like before Barzal broke out last year, I think we were talking like who's the one to own between Barzal and Beauvillier. Like now it seems so obvious, but weren't they both kind of similar prospects in terms of what people were expecting from them?
No, Barzal has always had that like crazy upside. So there was no reason for him to be picked where he was. The only thing was that a knee injury in his draft year, and otherwise he was like a top 5 talent. And then Boston just went out of their minds and made those 3 terrible picks. No offense, Jake DeBrusk, I like you, but they could have had Kyle Connor and Barzal and Thomas Chabot or Brock Besser or anything like that. Any one of these guys that were ranked where they should have gone. So no, I definitely have the higher upside for Barzal, even going back to when the kid was 16. He's always had that huge upside.
Wow, that's crazy to imagine. Imagine the Boston Bruins, but you trade DeBrusk for those 3 guys. That would be insane.
Wow. Zaboral and Senshin in there too. That it's just ugly stuff.
That's a shame. And they traded Tyler Seguin for Louis Eriksson, but they've made some good moves. Oh, they're still a good team. I don't know. They signed Yaroslav Halak. That was obviously a really good move recently.
Yeah. Pasternak at 23 or 24 or whatever it was. That was a good play. Yeah.
By the way, I wasn't planning on bringing up Boston, but I guess it's kind of interesting. So last week we talked about Bergeron injured, but we didn't realize it was going to be such a long-term injury. I believe that Jacob Forsbacka Karlsson, so we've got another Karlsson that's relevant in the NHL. He's been playing on the top line, I think, with Marchand and Pasternak, or he's going to be. Like I saw this on Roto World just today. So keep your eye on the next Karlsson. That might be good.
Yeah, you go JFK. Yeah, he's a player. He's got some good skills. I imagine that they were going to keep Krejci and Pasta together, the Czech kind of connection, and then Marchand will be playing with JFK or maybe DeBrusk even, and on that second unit, and kind of getting Marchand away from the top defensive oppositions. But yeah, it's a big loss to have Bergeron for the fantasy teams. Like this is a guy I've been championing all year. Like let's get this guy on a Hart Trophy ballot in the finalist positions. I love Patrice Bergeron. He plays almost perfect hockey, and he was having such a great year, and really drives that top line. So it's arguably, maybe now you call it the second best line in the league with the Avs role. And but yeah, him being out for 4 or 5 weeks, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, I think it's also the kind of thing where we'll really get a sense of how valuable are Pasternak and Marchand now that Bergeron is out. Like maybe we're going to see a stretch where they're well below the point per game paces that they were on while Bergeron was healthy. So we'll have to wait and see there. I don't think JFK is going to be able to fill those shoes, but maybe he'll be a good add in some leagues that are pretty deep. Last year was William Karlsson coming out of nowhere. Maybe this year it'll be Jacob Forsbacka. Okay, on New Jersey, we already talked about Vatanen coming back. Nico Heishier's also back. Heishier, by the way, back on the top line and top power play. If you recall, even before he got injured, Travis Zajac had bumped Hischier, but he's back. He's fine. And I don't really have a question for you about New Jersey. I'm just kind of just giving some news here. There's this Blake Coleman guy hasn't slowed down yet. We brought him up last week and said no way he's going to keep this up. Kind of like that guy Luff on LA, like getting points even though his deployment isn't great. Though actually Blake Coleman had better deployment last week. Still bottom six, but he saw 19 minutes and 19 seconds of ice time on Friday. A lot of it was shorthanded time. Is there something there with Blake Coleman with 9 points in his last 9 games, or is this going to be the last time finally that we have to talk about him?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, we're done with him. On the Detroit, I guess we need to start considering Andreas Athanasiou as maybe not a must own, but like a very tempting own right now. He's on a streak of 14 points in his last 15 games. He's been taking a ton of shots. He has many 5+ shot on goal games. Athanasiou's been playing with Nyquist and Nielsen yesterday, and he was also on a power play unit that I guess looked like the second power play unit, but was getting a lot of power play time. Are you in on Athanasiou, or is this going to be another quick run that's followed by another stretch of no points?
Yeah, I'm not buying too much. I mean, his shooting percentage isn't crazy high. His IPP and his 5-on-5 shooting percentages are up, but the players he's playing with, they're playing well in the moment. 60% ozone start time, great. Getting put in a situation to succeed at even strength, but he's got a 1042 PDO, which just screams unsustainably good luck. So that's going to come down at some point here. He's not on that top power play unit. I can't, stress that enough, that if you're not playing top power play, or it's a split situation, that you're just going to have a lower ceiling. So, he's been a guy that can put up 35 points, maybe sniff 40. I think this year he could put up 50 if he rode kind of the PDO wave all season long. But, it depends on how deep your league is. But yeah, he's catch him while he's hot. I love it. Grab him while he's moving and shaking, and then cut bait as soon as he's not.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I love the big shooters, right? Timo Meier was someone who was shooting a lot, and now he's scoring. And, there was Arvidsson back in the day. Like, sometimes you get a hint of what a player is capable of if they have a lot of ice time, if they're getting a lot of shots when they don't have a lot of ice time. And that might be what we're seeing from Athanasiou. But like you say, the deployment isn't there yet to, like, guarantee a spot for him on your roster. Like, he's not a must own, but definitely you got to ride him right now, especially if your league counts shots. What are your thoughts on this Max Domi point streak? He had 11 games in a row with a point, but he's now pointless in 2. Brian said that he would slow down. He's 2 games now without a point. Obviously, that's a very small sample of no-point games, but can we say that Brian was, no, we can't say that Brian was right, but what's your take overall on Max Domi? Like, we used to think of him as like a solid 60, 65-point guy. No one was expecting him to be like a point per game at this point in the season. So yeah, what do you think? Do you think he's going to go back on another 11-game point streak, or do you think maybe we're going to see a few more pointless games over the next few weeks?
Yeah, he was playing at like a 100-point pace, so Brian wasn't going out too far on a limb there to say he was going to slow down. He was coming. And it has, but it's easy to forget that he had a really nice end of the season with Arizona last year too. So going back to last year, he's got 44 points in his last 45 games. That's a nice sample size as a point per game guy. I didn't expect Montreal to be as good as they've been. So I'm going to stick with that and assume that they're going to slide a little bit more, maybe not score as many goals, but he's not going to convert at 20% of his shots. He's not that kind of goal scorer. So that's going to come down. But he is getting prime ice. He had a good pedigree when he was playing in London in junior. He's a guy who could put up some points. He played with good players, but they still produced. I think that realistically, he's banked enough points now that he could go off for, 65-point pace the rest of the way and have a really nice 70-point season. I'm going to hedge my bet a little bit and say he plays more at like a 60-point pace the rest of the way. And that'll land him, I don't know what the math is there, but yeah, in the low 60s, kind of maybe high 60s, mid 60s, right around there, if he stays healthy. So that's valuable. You probably banked the point a game or PPG plus that you're going to see from him for the rest of the year. But maybe I'm just a little bit of a pessimist.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we haven't seen it from him before, and maybe it would have been good to sell high before. Maybe you still can, or maybe he'll go. Like, Montreal is good, and he's playing with Jonathan Drouin, who's also been good. There were some really beautiful Jonathan Drouin highlights from the last game that I really enjoyed. So yeah, this team, like, they got a lot of offensive talent there, and Max Domi's a big part of it. But yeah, this streak had to come to an end at some point. Another guy streaking right now is Brandon Saad. He's been playing with Taves and Kane, which is a great spot to be, and he's been doing great. 7 points in his last 8 games. I feel like, especially with Chicago playing 4 games next week, you got to grab Brandon Saad. And I know Brian's going to say that I've been telling him that he doesn't need to worry about Brandon Saad because he's not that great. But in this spot, yeah, you want him, right? As long as he stays. Who knows how long he stays there, but while he's there, you got to have him on your team.
Yep, ride him while he's hot.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, this is a guy that I'm sure a lot of people want to get your thoughts on. Thomas Chabot. Jesus. Everyone's calling you Cameron Jesus Robinson with your hair, but like this guy, Thomas Chabot, is a contender for that title. Maybe not the Cam Robinson part, but okay, what am I even talking about right now? It's a little late. All right, 27 points in 23 games. Did you see this coming at all from him? Like, this is insane.
Well, no, it definitely didn't see this coming from him. Just because I expected Ottawa to be dreadful, and they are, but they're scoring a lot of goals, which is great. So, he's mostly real. He's a highly, highly touted prospect. Lots of offense coming out of the queue. Tremendous player for Canada at the World Juniors for a couple of years. Like, he's a lot of fun to watch. And he played pretty well last year too, getting limited deployment. He put up some points and he's flashed that upside, but it's hard to predict anything like this. I don't have it right in front of me here, but I think he's been pointless in 5 of the 23 games. And so he's popped 26 or 27 points in the other 18 contests. Like, that's insane for a defenseman. So it's going to slow down. Like, that is coming. But he's one of these guys. He's another one who's banking up points that, if he stays healthy, 55, 60 points, that's a reasonable end result for him. And that's going to be just huge for a kid who's 21. So I love Thomas Chabot. I hate Ottawa. So I'm very conflicted in that regard. I think that, can they continue to play this kind of wheels out, just going for it and let the goals in on one end and go fire them down the net the other side? It's not a sustainable way to play too long, especially if the coach wants to keep his job. But, as long as it's happening, I'm a big fan, and he's one league. But if somebody offered me Brent Burns for Thomas Chabot right now, like in a 1 year, I'm doing it. Yeah, for sure. Hell, I might even do it in a keeper league if it means I'm going to win a championship. So he's one of these guys that, obviously this is going to slow down. But I think he can still play at a 50-point pace the rest of the year.
Yeah, like it's hard to imagine he could keep this up, but yeah, he's clearly a gem, and in a dynasty league especially, he should be good for a long time, I think. What do you think, by the way, about this Drake Batherson guy who's been playing on the top line with Duchesne? 5 points in 5 games since he got called up, though nothing in his last 2 games. Is he a prospect that people should be watching out for?
Yeah, a bit of a late bloomer. Had a really nice junior career in the queue. Played for Team Canada last year and elevated up the lineup. Energy guy, got good skills. Stepped into pro hockey this year and was lights out in the American League too. So above a point a game down there. Got the call. Like you said, he's pointless in 2, but he started out with 5 and 3. Getting to see a lot of time with Matt Duchesne, and Matt Duchesne's got a lot of reasons to have a big year this year, and he's off to a good start. So he's a UFA, and if he's getting time next to Duchesne in all situations, then yeah, sign me up for sure. I've been a little more reserved on him in my assessment in the past. That I liked him. I liked the way he plays the game, but I didn't see 65, 70 point upside. But the more he does it in pro, the more I'm starting to be a believer.
Yeah, and of course, we'll see how long he even gets to hold the spot. We're talking about Drake Batherson, but Ottawa plays, I think, Monday, Tuesday next week. So he could be a good stream if you're listening to this Monday morning. Grab him for a couple games, see how he does after that. All right, I got to let you go, and I want to get to the Canucks. So really quickly, I'll just throw out here, Matt Dumba is on a 6-game point streak, pacing for 61 points on the season after hitting 50 last year. A lot of us were talking about, do you think that Dumba could hit 50 again? Now I think the question is, can he hit 60? So that's one thing that people should be thinking about. And then another thing that I definitely want to get your thoughts on is, was Brian wrong about Tom Wilson last week? This guy's killing it at this point. He's on the top line right now with Ovi and Backstrom, 9 points in 7 games. Obviously, there's some injuries, so Tom Wilson won't stay on that top power play forever, but he's averaging over 20 minutes a game also. So it's not like he's just a banger that's playing on the top line, but not an important part of the team. Big minutes, getting points on a good line. I feel like maybe his playoffs last year may have been for real. I was saying that last week. Brian was saying this guy only had 35 points last week. Forget about him. So are you Team Elon or Team Brian about Tom Wilson right now?
I'm on Team Elon. And if it was me, I'd be keeping him on that top power play when everyone's healthy too. Well, I guess maybe not over TJ, but I'd be finding a way to get him out there because he brings a unique set of skills that obviously meshes well with Kuznetsov and Ovechkin on that top line. I was doing personalized rankings for people this summer, and in multi-cat leagues, he was up there because you could see that this is a guy who could put up 50 points and just fill all the other categories, just stuff them right up for you. So in a points only league, I don't think he's going to be keeping up over a point per game, obviously, but I think he can run hot and he can get, run at a 70, 75 point pace for stretches or even above like he's doing right now. And then at the end of the day, he's probably going to be a 50 point guy, 55 point guy even. And if you got multi-cats, like, yeah, sign me up. I like Tom Wilson. I hate what he does on the ice sometimes when he makes bonehead moves, but when he's not, he's an effective player.
Yeah, Brian's correcting me here in the chat room saying I misrepresented his take last week. He said add him while he's on the top, obviously. But, I was more referencing, Brian, your take from like the summer and going into the year when I was saying, oh, he's looking like that. You said that you don't want to put much stock into his playoff performance. And you're saying right now in the chat room that he could hope to be Troy Brouwer. So I still think that there's a big difference between what you think about Tom Wilson and what I think about him. And clearly Cam is on my side. And I got the prospect expert, the editor at Dobber Hockey, Dobber Prospects. But you're pretty good too, Brian. Okay, let's get to the Vancouver Canucks that everyone's been waiting for because you are the expert on the Canucks. So Edler returned yesterday. He had a quiet game, 1 shot, no hits, no blocks, but got to imagine that he'll get back to his amazing multi-category godliness very soon. Also, Brock Besser should be back soon. So it'll be very fun to see the Canucks at full strength again, because then we get to see once again, hopefully Elias Pettersson going off because he had been to start the year like everything you promised. He had a goal and assist yesterday. So now he's up to 21 points in 20 games. You were like so high on him and you were totally right. I'm sure you're not the only one, but to me, like you're like with Gensel, right? Like I feel like Cam and Elias Pettersson have been synonymous in my head for a while. So where do you think Pettersson lands for the rest of this season? Like he was a bit cold. He only had 2 points in 8 games before yesterday's feast on the LA Kings. Can we just blame that on the injuries? Like now, like I said, with Edler and Besser both coming back, got to imagine good times are ahead for Elias Pettersson. Can he stay a point per game guy for the rest of the season? I know he's great long term. I don't even want to hear you talk about how amazing he'll be in dynasty leagues for years to come, because I know you think he's like one of the top guys, but you just listed him actually at the top of the show in like your top 5 when we were talking about where Liney slots in. But for the rest of this year, is he going to stay at a point per game?
Yeah, I think he's going to slip a little bit below it when it's all said and done. You're going to have to give him a little bit of leeway for a few reasons. So he misses Brock Besser. Everyone in Vancouver does. So he's been, a lot of his plays have died on sticks of Louis Eriksson and guys like that. So him and Nikolai Goldobin have some nice chemistry. They're buddies off the ice. They sit together. They room together. They're having some fun. But Pettersson's playing on a bad team and they're injured. And they've played a ton of road games. I think they played like 17 or something like that on the road already this year, which is crazy. And so, there's going to be some tough nights for him and some tough stretches. But as someone who's watching, most of their games there, is that even when he's not putting up points, he's doing just ridiculous things that, normal superstars aren't doing, aren't thinking about, or it's just, there might be 1, there might be 5 in a night where he's doing things that just are out of this world. So I think he probably lands somewhere in that, low 70s, maybe pushes 75, 76 at the end of the season if he stays healthy. But I guess he's missed a few with the concussion, so maybe drop that down to 70, 71. He's elite, and once Besser gets back, and if he's healthy, those two are going to make some magic. So Besser hasn't been healthy all season, and they were still doing some pretty exciting things together. So we all know it. I said it last Christmas when I was on with you guys that you asked me if I wanted Besser or Pettersson, and that was right at the peak of Brock Besser scoring like a goal a game, and I said Elias Pettersson right then too. So I'm sticking with that. Edler, we mentioned there, he's back and he'll be on that top unit. They've missed him greatly on that unit. Again, it misses Brock Besser, and apparently he should be back this week. Last guy up there is Nikolai Goldobin, and so I said that him and Pettersson, they're having a lot of fun. They're chumming around. Goldobin was one of these guys that, he had the high pedigree. He was a first-round pick. He got dealt to Vancouver, and it looked like a good trade for Jannik Hansen. But this year, no one had a kind of a bigger spotlight on him than Goldobin. Was he going to prove that he could be an everyday NHL player in a top 6, or was he going to be one of these guys that ends up in Europe? And so far, he's been really, really strong. So he had some unsustainably bad luck early in the season. His on-ice shooting percentage, his personal shooting percentage was way, way down. And so he had like 1 goal and a few points. But he was getting the chances, and now things are starting to go his way. He's got 12 points in his last 12 games. He's loving life with Pettersson. He's on the second power play unit. So again, drop your expectations because he's not on that top unit. But the Canucks they're going to be a bad team this year. They're showing it right now. They've lost 8 of 9. They're going to bottom out for a bit, but they're going to score some goals when Besser's back and he's healthy. And then next year, you're going to be adding Quinn Hughes and whoever, maybe they get lucky and they draft top 5 and they inject another, really dynamic player in the next 1 or 2 years too. So they're a team that you want to get a piece of in long-term in Dynasty. And this year that, you basically, you want Pettersson or Besser and you got to mute your expectations for what they're going to be in future years.
Okay, wow. So great roundup there. Goldobin is so interesting. He's still only 5% owned in Yahoo. And like you say, like 12 points his last 12 games or something. Like he's basically been on fire. You say that he's been on the second power play. He's actually lately, he's been on the top power play, right? It's been Goldobin, Gagne, Horvat, Pettersson, and Alex Edler. I guess, are you more saying that Goldobin's going to be the one who gets bumped when Besser comes back?
Yeah, he's probably going to be the one that he's played primarily on that second unit this year. Obviously, you like him when he's on that top unit, but I just love that he's basically locked with Pettersson this year. Like they like each other. They have good chemistry. Goldobin is great with his shot assists, so he sets guys up for shots all the time, which is going to be great especially if they put Besser back on that line full time. So yeah, I like Goldobin. He's actually the guy I picked up when I dropped Clefbaum. So. And I'm not sliding him into my lineup either as a hot streak as I probably should. I'm just picking him up just to see what happens. He's one of these guys that he's rolling hot, and when you put a player that has chemistry with an all-world talent, I like to get a piece of that.
You know what, Cam? High five to you, because I also added Goldobin this morning in one of my leagues, so we could ride him together. Let me know if you're considering dropping him, and then I'll do the same. Let's do this in tandem, okay? But great. Also, high five to you, because it's been such an amazing show. You slotted in, and it's like you've been doing this show with me for years. I really appreciate it. We were in a bind, and you came through in a huge way. This has been such an amazing show. I'm sure everyone who's listening has really enjoyed it. And obviously, tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. Let us know what you thought. Also, Cam, people can follow you on Twitter at hockey_Robinson, I believe.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So you definitely want to be following Cam. He's a gold mine of information. And in fact, if you want more Cam Robinson, he's got a Patreon where he's got his own Facebook group mainly for dynasty questions. I'm sure Cam will answer any question you have. Cam, do you want to pump that up quickly?
Yeah, for sure. So it's just a spot where people, they can help kind of contribute to my scouting and my fantasy life and keep me away from my wife and kid for a little bit longer. They'll love that. But at least if I got a little dough coming in. But yeah, it's a great group of guys. A lot of them are Karlsson fellows and guys off of Twitter. Yeah, lots of smart people to bounce ideas off of. We do focus on young guys. I give kind of sneak peeks at my real draft rankings. I offer, first crack at Q&As for mailbags on Dobber prospects, stuff like that. So you kind of get a lot of different extra goodies. And I even got a category where you can harass me on private message, get access to my brain 24 hours a day sort of thing. So yeah, check that out. It's you can find it on my Twitter page, but it's Crazy Joe Davola Scouting on Patreon.
Yeah, or you could just like you're saying, look for hockey_Robinson or just search Cam Robinson on Twitter. You'll find him, and then you'll get the link to that Patreon. And so yeah, throw some money at Cam if you can, and if you've got even more money, you can also throw it at us for our Patreon, keepingkarlsson.com/Patreon. But let's let Cam have the spotlight today. So with that, let's cue the outro music. Normally, I would throw to Brian I'd throw to Brian to read us the credits, but he is not here. So I don't know. What did I use? What did you use? I used Cam. I looked up a bunch of stuff. I used Dobber Hockey a lot, and I used Cam to answer all the great questions. How about we leave it at that? Thanks again, Cam, so much. And I'll be back with you, and I'll be back for all the rest of you. We'll both be back next week for another episode. Bye.
See ya.
Cool. What a show.
Yeah, good stuff.
That was awesome. Was it was it too long? I could let me know if you want me to prune it a bit for next week. I got excited that you were coming. Wanted to throw all these questions at you. Oh,
yeah, it's the same with me, man. I got lots of words to say. We could probably do this all night, and it wouldn't be too bad. But no, that was fine. That's 2 hours. It's what you're saying, 90 to 120. So
yeah. Whenever I give a range, you should probably assume it's going to be at the end of that range.
I said that to my wife. I'm like, I'll be home maybe 5:30, and I was like, probably after 6.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. So thanks so much again, and. Yeah, I guess I'll just be in touch with you this week. And thanks, obviously, to everyone here in the chat room. This was really fun. You guys always help make the show more fun and give us some real-time feedback here. So peace out. Bye-bye.
You guys.